Chapter 1186. As Xiao Zhan spoke, he looked down at Ji Tianqing, who was in the crowd. He even pointed at Ji Tianqing and shouted righteously, "First Elder, it's this scoundrel. He has a vile character and is unbridled. Last night, he even sneaked into the evergreen courtyard." As soon as Xiao Zhan said that, countless people from the Xiao clan turned to look at Ji Tianqing. Many Xiao clansmen looked at him with hostility and started whispering to each other. Xiao Chen and Xiao Ling were stunned. They looked at Xiao Zhan and Ji Tianqing in confusion. They had no idea what was going on. At this moment, Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku also stood out. The two of them rushed out of the crowd and flew to the arena. They pointed at Ji Tianqing with righteous indignation and complained about his crimes in front of everyone. "Everyone look! This is the scum of our Xiao clan. His name is Xiao Tianqing. He thinks that he is Xiao Han's nephew and can do whatever he wants in the clan. Not only is he arrogant, but he is also violent. He even injured a few of our Xiao clan's disciples. That's right. This person is despicable and sinister. He purposely angered and insulted us. He even used tricks to injure us. Due to Xiao Han's identity, we did not dare to violate the Xiao clan's rules. That was why we endured the humiliation until now. Tonight, we will expose this despicable and shameless bastard in front of the entire clan. Great Elder, please uphold justice for us and seek justice for us." Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku shouted agitatedly. Their voices reverberated throughout the entire plaza. Instantly, the thousands of people around the square glared at Ji Tianqing with fury in their eyes. They began to discuss and curse him. In everyone's eyes, only the main clan members were Xiao clan's disciples. Those branch family members who were born and grew up outside were not considered Xiao clansmen. They were all outsiders. The Xiao clan was united. They were arrogant and had a sense of superiority in their bones. They were all hostile to the branch family members. In an instant, the crowd was agitated. Countless people were hostile to Ji Tianqing. The people around him also retreated, and the surroundings became empty. Only Xiao Chen and Xiao Ling remained by his side. Both of them were very angry and immediately stepped forward to defend him. "Everyone, don't listen to Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku's nonsense. This is framing. Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku are despicable people. They are jealous of Brother Tianqing's talent, so they deliberately targeted and humiliated Brother Tianqing. Xiao Zhan, you despicable person, how dare you slander Tianqing? Show me the evidence." The atmosphere became very heavy, and the air was filled with hostility and killing intent. On the stage, the first elder stared at Xiao Zhan with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "Xiao Zhan, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. This young Master Tianqing is an honored guest that Xiao Han brought back. How can you slander him as you please? Tonight, if you can't produce evidence, and if young Master Tianqing is innocent, I will definitely punish you according to the clan's rules." The great elder's attitude was very solemn, and his tone was very dignified. The other elders also looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. Without a doubt, these elders knew Ji Tianqing's identity. He was not a member of the Xiao clan, but a genius from the Middle State Imperial Court, a popular person in the Imperial Court. After all, when Xiao Han sent a message back to the Xiao clan to bring Ji Tianqing to meet the Xiao clan's patriarch, it was approved by the elders. However, this secret was only known by the few elders. Xiao Zhan, his son, and the rest of the Xiao clan did not know about this. Xiao Zhan did not take the first elder's words to heart. He even said solemnly, "First elder, I dare to use my head as a guarantee that this man is the thief who stole the divine skill. As for the evidence, it's too simple. As long as you send someone to his residence to search, you will definitely find the ancestral divine skill." Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku also nodded and said, "That's right. We can also use our lives to guarantee that this bastard stole the divine skill." With that, the thousands of Xiao clan members were even more certain that the thief was Ji Tianqing. The crowd was even more agitated. The gazes and expressions of the elders became more and more complicated. It was to the extent that some people even looked at Xiao Zhan and the other two with eyes filled with deep pity. The first elder took a deep breath and stared deeply at Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku. He said in a low voice, "Are you really so sure? Using your lives as a guarantee?" Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan all nodded and said with certainty, That's right. It's him. First Elder, don't hesitate anymore. Quickly search his residence, and the truth will be revealed. First Elder. He is the thief. Please give the order to capture him immediately. Don't let him escape. Seeing this, the First Elder did not say anything else. His face darkened and he ordered coldly. All right. In that case, I will go to his residence now and search personally. Second Elder, Fourth Elder, Fifth Elder. You all stay here and look after young Master Tianqing, Xiaozhan, and the rest. I will be back soon. After that, the First Elder personally led 2 other elders to Tingfeng Garden to search Ji Tianqing's residence. The other elders stayed in the arena to look after Xiaozhan and the other 2, as well as Ji Tianqing, who was in the crowd. Xiaozhan, Xueqi, and Xiaozhan all looked down at Ji Tianqing with a complacent attitude and a sinister sneer on their faces. In their opinion, the truth would be revealed soon. Ji Tianqing was dead for sure. Xiao Chen and Xiao Ling guarded Ji Tianqing on both sides. They were filled with anxiety and anger, but there was nothing they could do. The 2 stared at Ji Tianqing and said worriedly, Brother Tianqing, why aren't you saying anything? They are slandering you. You have to refute them. Young Master Tianqing, you stay here. I will go and look for Uncle Xiaohan now. Don't worry, we will definitely not allow Xiaozhan and his son to slander you. Xiao Ling also recovered her wits and nodded repeatedly. Brother Tianqing, don't worry. I will go and look for the Third Elder now. They will definitely help you clear your name. From the beginning to the end, Ji Tianqing's expression was indifferent, and he looked completely at ease. Even if he was being criticized and cursed by thousands of Xiao clan members, his expression did not change, remaining calm and collected. Seeing that Xiao Chen and Xiao Ling were about to leave, Xiao Chen revealed a confident smile and waved his hand. There is no need. You all stay here and watch the show. As the saying goes, a straight man does not fear a crooked shadow. I have a clear conscience. What is there to fear? Don't worry, the First Elder will get to the bottom of this. Seeing Xiao Chen so confident and calm, Xiao Chen and Xiao Ling immediately felt much more at ease and calmed down. However, Xiao Chen was still not at ease. He had Xiao Ling stay behind to accompany Xiao Chen while he went to inform Xiao Han and the Third Elder. Unknowingly, 15 minutes passed. Under the anticipation of thousands of people, the First Elder finally brought the 2 elders back to the plaza. Everyone's gazes gathered on the First Elder, waiting for the results. Xiaozhan quickly went forward and asked expectantly, First Elder, I was right? You found the stolen ancestral divine technique, right? Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku were also very pleased. They echoed, First Elder, you finally believe us now, right? This brat is a scum, a beast. However, the First Elder's expression was very gloomy. He glanced at the 3 of them coldly and shouted, Shut up! You maliciously slandered others. How should you be punished? Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku were immediately stupefied as they stared at the First Elder, dumbfounded. What's going on? First Elder? What do you mean? Could it be that you did not find the ancestral divine technique? That's impossible. There must be one. Please check again. Chapter 1187. Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku were confused. They did not know what was going on. Xiao Zhan's reaction was the most intense. After all, he was the one who had placed the box containing the ancestral divine skill in Ji Tianqing's residence. However, the Grand Elder said expressionlessly, I have searched his residence and did not find the ancestral divine skill. The other 2 elders also nodded in agreement with the Great Elder's words. That's right. We have searched Verdant Pine Yard twice. Xiao Zhan, the Grand Elder's soul imprint is on the box. This cannot be wrong. Xiao Zhan was dumbfounded. His eyes were red as he shouted, This is impossible. The treasure box must be in his residence. Even if it is not in his room, it must be in his infinite space ring. Seeing Xiao Zhan's reaction, the Grand Elder seemed to have understood something. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Enough. Xiao Zhan, shut the hell up. The 3 of you maliciously framed others. According to the rules, you will be demoted to servant for 3 years. This matter involves the ancestral divine skill. Your crimes are even more severe. I will demote you to servant for 10 years. When the Great Elder announced this order, the thousands of Xiao clan members in the square broke out into loud discussions and gasps of surprise. Oh my god! Isn't this punishment too severe? Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku are the elites and geniuses of our clan. They have high statuses. How can they be demoted to servant? Even if there is a mistake, this is just a misunderstanding. Why is the punishment so severe? 10 years. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku also showed expressions of anger. They unwillingly shouted, "No! I don't believe this is true. Grand Elder, please search again. I will bring you there personally." Originally, the three of them had used their lives as a guarantee that Ji Tianqing had stolen the ancestral divine skill. However, the Grand Elder had searched Verdant Pine Yard carefully and did not find the treasure box or the ancestral divine skill. He did not want to anger Ji Tianqing. After all, he had offended the genius of the Emperor Palace for no reason. Of course, he would punish the three of them severely. However, he could not bear to kill the three of them. The three of them were the elites of the Xiao clan. If they were killed, the loss would be too great. Therefore, the first elder chose a compromise and sentenced the three of them to 10 years of odd jobs. However, the first elder didn't expect that before Ji Tianqing could say anything, Xiao Zhan and the other two wouldn't give up and would continue to pester him. The first elder was so angry that he almost vomited blood. In his heart, he cursed these three idiots for not knowing what was good for them. Enough! Are you going to disobey my orders? The great elder roared furiously. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku were all stunned. The three of them were shocked to the point their faces turned pale. They obediently shut their mouths and didn't dare to criticize or resist. Although they didn't know exactly what had happened, they still didn't know. However, they knew that they had already been defeated, utterly defeated. The only thing they could do now was to admit defeat and accept the Great Elder's punishment. If this continued, any intelligent person would be able to tell that something was amiss. Xiao Zhan had no choice but to calm down. He forcefully suppressed his anger and said word by word, "This junior will obey the Great Elder's orders." The first elder heaved a sigh of relief and said expressionlessly, "Second elder, you are the elder in charge of the Hall of Law. This order will be carried out by you. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku will be stripped of their status and treatment. They will be reduced to odd jobs for 10 years. Take the three of them away." The second elder cupped his hands to show that he had obeyed and was about to bring the three of them away from the stage. Everyone thought that this matter was over. Even Xiao Ling heaved a sigh of relief. She was happy and gratified for Ji Tianqing. However, no one would have thought that Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this while, would step out of the crowd at this time. "Hold on!" he shouted in a dignified tone. His figure flashed and flew onto the stage. Swoosh! He stood beside the first elder. His entire body emitted a terrifying pressure that invisibly shrouded the entire place. Instantly, the few elders who were closer to him felt the immense pressure and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku were even more suppressed by the invisible pressure. They couldn't even lift their heads. Ji Tianqing displayed the domineering aura of a transcendent expert and the confidence of a peerless genius. He was as dazzling as the sun, and everyone could only look up to him. He stared sharply at the first elder and said in a deep voice, "First elder, from the beginning to the end, no matter how Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan slandered and insulted me, I didn't refute a single word. I thought that as the first elder of the Xiao clan, you would handle this matter impartially and give everyone a satisfactory explanation. I didn't expect that you would disappoint me." As soon as he said that, the thousands of Xiao clan members in the square widened their eyes in disbelief. They looked at Ji Tianqing as though they were looking at a lunatic. Cries of surprise rose and fell from the crowd. Gosh! Is this kid crazy? How dare he question the first elder? What is this guy trying to do? Xiao Zhan and the rest have already been punished by the first elder. Is this kid going to add insult to injury? This guy's aura is too strong. It's even stronger than the first elder's aura. Where did he come from? No matter how strong he is still a member of the Xiao clan. How dare he be so arrogant? What right does he have to question the first elder's authority? The first elder didn't dare to look Ji Tianqing in the eye. He lowered his head slightly and hesitated for a moment before asking, Since you feel that my punishment is unfair, what do you want? Ji Tianqing was expressionless and said coldly, "It's not what I want. I just want justice. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan slandered me. They even used their lives as a guarantee. Since they want to die so badly, they have to die. This is because the traitors who stole the Xiao clan's ancestral divine technique are Xiao Zhan and his son. Xiao Ku and his father are accomplices." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes in horror and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Everyone could see that Ji Tianqing wanted to kill Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan. He had to kill the three of them. The first elder frowned and said in a low voice, "Young Master Tianqing, I understand your feelings, but you can't slander them like this. There's no meaning to it." "Slander? Ha ha." Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a cold voice, "Then I'll ask the first elder to search the residence of Xiao Zhan and his son. If you find the ancestral divine technique, please kill them in front of everyone." The first elder hesitated and glanced at Xiao Zhan and the rest. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan were all confused. They didn't know what was going on. Xiao Chong and Xiao Ku were even smiling coldly, as if they didn't care at all. Seeing this, the first elder knew that the three of them couldn't have stolen the divine technique. Chapter 1188. The first elder led the other two elders into the night sky, and rushed to the residence of Xiao Zhan and his son. Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku all sneered at Ji Tianqing and didn't forget to mock him. "Kid, are you confused by anger? He. So what if you're angry? So what if you deliberately slandered us? We're magnanimous and have a clear conscience. Tianqing, you slandered us in public. You won't be able to escape punishment later." Ji Tianqing looked at Xiao Zhan, Xiao Ku, and Xiao Zhan expressionlessly. He revealed a pitiful look and said in a mocking tone, "You're going to die tonight. Do you know how you're going to die? You're going to die because of your stupidity." Xiao Zhan and the other two were instantly enraged and trembling with anger. "You kid, you're too arrogant." Ji Tianqing couldn't be bothered with them. He lowered his eyes and waited calmly. Below the arena, Xiao Ling secretly clenched her small fists and looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of admiration. She muttered silently, "Brother Tianqing, you're too strong. Your aura actually suppressed the first elder. No matter what you do, I'll always believe in you and support you." Not long after, the first elder led the other two elders and flew back to the square as fast as lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. When the three of them landed on the arena, Xiao Zhan and his son couldn't wait to ask, "First elder, you've already searched, right? How is it? Can you prove that we were slandered?" "Third elder, Xiao Tianqing slandered us in public. His crime is unforgivable. You have to deal with it impartially." However, as soon as the father and son finished speaking, they were greeted by three pairs of eyes that were as sharp as swords. The first elder and the other two elders all looked at them with cold and murderous gazes. "Shut up! Audacious traitor, you're about to die and you still don't know how to repent. Xiao Zhan, I really didn't expect you to do such a thing." The angry shouts of the three elders resounded throughout the entire square. Everyone was stunned, revealing a puzzled and horrified expression. Xiao Zhan and his son, as well as Xiao Ku, looked at the great elder in confusion. The first elder could not be bothered to say anything. He expressionlessly took out a treasure box and presented it to everyone. This treasure box was found in Xiao Chong's bedroom. It was hidden in the wall. Fortunately, I left my soul imprint on the treasure box. Otherwise, it would be impossible for ordinary people to find it. Then the first elder glared at Xiao Zhan and roared, "Xiao Zhan, the evidence is here. What else do you have to say?" Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xiao Ku were dumbfounded again. They stared at the treasure box as if they had seen a ghost. "This is impossible. How could this treasure box be in my room? We didn't do it. We would never steal the ancestral divine arts. How could this be? What the hell? Why is this thing in Xiao Chong's room?" The three of them were filled with fear. Their minds were in a mess, and they roared ferociously. However, the evidence was in front of everyone. Even if Xiao Zhan and his son jumped into the river, they would not be able to clear their names. Thousands of Xiao clan members exclaimed and whispered to each other. They pointed at Xiao Zhan and his son and scolded them with disdain. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any more time. He glared at the First Elder and shouted, "First Elder, it's time for you to fulfill your promise and enforce the family rules. These three stole the ancestral divine arts of the Xiao clan. They should be sentenced to death in front of everyone." The First Elder hesitated. He softened his tone and said to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Tianqing, I'm afraid this is not appropriate. Please forgive us." The other elders also began to plead for leniency. "Young Master Tianqing, you are a magnanimous person. Please don't be calculative with these three evil creatures." "Young Master Tianqing, this is a misunderstanding. Please calm down and spare their lowly lives." Xiao Zhan and his son, Xueqi, and Xiao Zhan were dumbfounded when they saw that the elders were begging for mercy in front of Ji Tianqing. The three of them stared at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape. They felt like their brains weren't enough to comprehend what was going on. The thousands of Xiao clan members in the square were also baffled. They were shocked and confused, and they started discussing again. "What's going on? Why are the elders begging for mercy in front of that kid? It seems like the elders are in awe of that kid. Isn't this too ridiculous? That kid is the junior of the elders." Xiao Ling was also puzzled. She was even more confused. She muttered softly, "Big Brother Tianqing, who exactly are you? Why is your identity so mysterious?" In the ring, Ji Tianqing glanced at the First Elder coldly. He sneered and said, "All right, since the First Elder can't bear to do it, I'll punish them on your behalf." As he spoke, a golden light flashed in his right palm. It condensed into a golden sword. He walked to Xiao Zhan and kicked him to the ground. He said loudly, "Traitor Xiao Zhan, you stole our ancestral martial art. You deserve to be beheaded." When he said the word beheaded, he held the golden sword in his right hand and slashed down fiercely. Puff! Xiao Zhan's neck was cut off. His head rolled on the ground. Dark red blood spurted out from his neck. A cultivator at level 8 of Sky Origin Stage was beheaded by Ji Tianqing with only one sword strike. Xiao Zhan didn't even have the chance to dodge. He didn't even have the right to resist. Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone was shocked. The square was in dead silence. Thousands of people were terrified. They opened their mouths and felt a chill down their spines. Xiao Chong and Xueqi were scared out of their wits. They stood there in a daze, trembling. They didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so arrogant. He dared to kill Xiao Zhan in front of everyone. At this moment, Ji Tianqing kicked Xueqi to the ground again. He raised his sword and was about to slash down. The Grand Elder was the first to react. He shouted, "Stop it!" The other elders also came to their senses. They quickly stood in front of Ji Tianqing and pulled Xueqi and Xiao Chong apart. "Master Tianqing, please calm down. Don't be rash. This is our Xiao clan's business. Please let us handle it. Master Tianqing, don't go too far. We Xiao clan have integrity. They may have offended you, but they don't deserve to die." The elders surrounded Ji Tianqing and tried to persuade him. Of course, there were also a few hot-tempered elders who scolded him. They were so angry that their faces turned green. Ji Tianqing glanced at the elders and sneered, "The three of them slandered me with their lives. Don't they deserve to die? Get out of my way. Whoever dares to stop me will die." Chapter 1189. Ji Tianqing alone had forced the 8 elders to retreat with just one sentence. Such a domineering and imposing aura had stunned the thousands of Xiao clan members. Their hearts were beating wildly from the shock. Xiao Chong and Xueqi were even more shocked and shocked. Their minds had collapsed, and they lay limp on the arena. Both of them were trembling like sifting chaff. They were so frightened that they broke out in cold sweat. They couldn't even speak a complete sentence. Ji Tianqing didn't care about the 8 elders, nor did he care about the discussions of the thousands of Xiao clan members. Swoosh! His figure flashed past the crowd and appeared in front of Xiao Chong. He kept his sword. Puff! With a dull sound, Xiao Chong's head was chopped off and rolled on the arena. He died with his eyes wide open. A gush of hot blood splattered on Xueqi's face. He was scared out of his wits. "Ah! Don't kill me! I don't want to die!" Xiao Chong's father stole his ancestral divine skill and purposely placed it in your room to frame you. You bastard! How can you be so cruel? I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Xueqi ran like a madman. His hair was disheveled as he roared hysterically. He finally could not withstand the immense fear and spoke the truth in front of everyone. Of course, he was scared out of his wits. His words were incoherent and he had completely lost control of himself. Ji Tianqing did not chase after him. He extended his right hand and threw the golden sword. Thud! The sword cut through the night sky and pierced through Xueqi's back. It pierced through his back and heart. The tip of the sword could be seen from his chest. Xueqi's roaring stopped abruptly. His body took 2 steps forward and fell heavily on the arena. He twitched a few times on the ground before he finally breathed his last. He died on the spot. The golden sword that was stabbed into his body slowly dissipated. There was a deathly silence in the square. Everyone stared at Xueqi's corpse. Their faces were filled with fear, and their backs were drenched in cold sweat. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that Tianqing would be so arrogant and did not put the Xiao clan in his eyes at all. He actually dared to kill Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xueqi in front of everyone in the square. This was simply shocking and audacious. In the eyes of the Xiao clan's members, no matter how big of a mistake Xiao Zhan and the other 2 had made, they should be dealt with by the Xiao clan's elders. Xiao Tianqing was only a branch family disciple, and he had absolutely no right to interfere with the family affairs of the Xiao clan. Everyone was silent for a moment, and then they gradually recovered from their shock. Instantly, waves of discussions erupted, and the crowd was excited. Too arrogant. Xiao Tianqing, this bastard, is simply treacherous. No matter how big of a mistake Xiao Zhan and the other 2 made, it's not up to a branch family disciple to punish them. Tianqing Xiao has no respect for his elders. He actually dared to kill a member of our Xiao clan in front of the statue of our old ancestor. This is an act of disobedience to the old ancestor. Elders, please take him down and deal with him according to the family rules. You must punish him severely. Not only were the members of the Xiao clan filled with righteous indignation, but the elders were also glaring at Ji Tianqing with ashen faces as they roared furiously. Young Master Tianqing, you have gone too far. You are too arrogant. No matter how impressive you are in the central region, it has nothing to do with the Xiao clan. You have no right to interfere with the family affairs of the Xiao clan. You killed our members in front of all of us. You are trampling on the faces of the 8 elders and trampling on the dignity of the Xiao clan. We will not let this matter rest. Even if we have to go to the imperial court, we will demand an explanation. Ji Tianqing looked at the elders indifferently and his lips curled into a disdainful sneer. He wasn't a bloodthirsty person, but Xiao Zhan and the other 2 were courting death. They had to die. The elders of the Xiao clan knew about his background, but they didn't know how high his position was. The elders had never left the Xiao clan and they didn't know about the situation in the outside world. They couldn't imagine how high Ji Tianqing's position was. Of course, they didn't know Ji Tianqing's character either. Just as the elders were filled with anger and surrounded Ji Tianqing, wanting to demand an explanation from him, Ji Tianqing suddenly spoke. A low voice full of majesty suddenly exploded in the night sky. Whoever dares to lay a hand on Tianqing will be the sinner of the Xiao clan. The voice reverberated, causing pain in everyone's eardrums and their faces to turn pale. Countless people lifted their heads to look at the sky, and saw a middle-aged man in a purple robe flying in the air with a cold expression. The middle-aged man was tall and had a dignified appearance. He had a mustache on his chin and he exuded a dignified and authoritative aura. Most of the thousands of Xiao clan members didn't recognize him. However, the expressions of the 8 elders changed, and their eyes became serious. Xiao Han? Why is he here? Where did he go previously? What does he mean by that? The elders frowned and whispered to each other. In the next moment, Xiao Han flew down from the night sky and landed on the arena. He stood beside Ji Tianqing. He stared coldly at the elders and shouted, "Elders, don't blame me for not reminding you. Whoever dares to lay a hand on Tianqing will be the sinner of the Xiao clan. If anyone dares to disrespect Tianqing again, I won't be courteous to him." Once these words were spoken, the expressions of the elders turned extremely ugly. The thousands of Xiao clan members in the square started to discuss among themselves in shock. Who is this guy? Why is he so arrogant? How dare he scold the elders? He's Xiao Han? The pride of the Xiao clan? Xiao Han? Could he be the Donglin divine general who left the Xiao clan to guard the East Sea? Gosh! He's Donglin divine general Xiao Han? No wonder he dares to scold the elders. Tianqing is Xiao Han's nephew. Xiao Han is obviously trying to protect him. I'm afraid the elders can't do anything to him. The 8 elders were silent. They looked at Xiao Han and Ji Tianqing with mixed feelings. They didn't know what to do. Now that things had developed to this stage, the elders didn't dare to act rashly. They could only wait and see. At this moment, another aged and dignified voice resounded in the night sky. Ancestor has arrived. The descendants of the Xiao clan welcome you. This sudden voice immediately caused the entire square to boil. Countless people were in disbelief. Some were shocked, while others were looking at the night sky with joy. Gosh! The ancestor has been alarmed. Tianqing must be too arrogant. He must have alarmed the ancestor. The ancestor hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. I didn't expect him to still be alive. He actually appeared personally. Wow, I've lived for more than 100 years, but I've never seen the ancestor in person. Our Xiao clan's ancestor has appeared. Tianqing is dead for sure. Even Xiao Han can't protect him. Thousands of people from the Xiao clan were discussing excitedly. In the next moment, a ball of dazzling sacred golden light flew from the night sky and landed on the arena in the middle of the square. That ball of sacred golden light enveloped 2 elders. One of them was wearing a purple robe and had white hair. He was the 3rd elder. The other elder in a black robe was skinny. His white hair reached his waist, and he exuded a mysterious and vast aura. He was the Xiao clan's ancestor, Xiao Wentian. When Xiao Wentian arrived on the stage with the 3rd elder, Xiao Wentian was stunned. The thousands of Xiao clan members in the square all knelt on the ground and paid their respects. Regardless of whether they were ordinary clansmen, the 8 elders, or divine general Xiao Han, they all knelt on the ground and paid their respects. After all, they were all disciples of the Xiao clan. They were all descendants of the Xiao clan's ancestor. Only one person stood proudly on the arena and didn't kneel down. Chapter 1190. The appearance of the Xiao clan's patriarch made all the members of the Xiao clan extremely excited. Everyone knew that the Xiao clan's patriarch had not been involved in worldly affairs for hundreds of years. Only a few of the members of the Xiao clan had seen the true face of the Xiao clan's patriarch. To most of the members of the Xiao clan, being able to see the patriarch with their own eyes was the greatest wish and surprise of their lives. In an instant, thousands of people knelt on the ground respectfully and bowed their heads deeply. They welcomed the arrival of the Xiao clan's patriarch with the most sincere attitude. Even the honorable divine general Xiao Han, who had limitless glory in the middle state, was respectful and humble to the Xiao clan's patriarch. As such, Ji Tianqing, who was standing proudly on the arena, became the most conspicuous and eye-catching one. Many people glared at him when they saw this scene. They cursed him in their hearts for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. He didn't even kneel before the great ancestor. Many members of the Xiao clan cursed him in their hearts, hoping that he would be severely punished by the patriarch. However, no one expected the Xiao clan's patriarch to not be angry at all when he landed on the arena. Moreover, he even walked to Ji Tianqing and stood in front of Ji Tianqing. He nodded slightly at Ji Tianqing as a sign of respect. Seeing this scene, all the members of the Xiao clan were dumbfounded. They were dumbfounded. No one could believe that the honorable Xiao clan's patriarch, who was as powerful as an immortal, would nod at Ji Tianqing as a sign of respect. This was simply too shocking. Countless members of the Xiao clan would rather believe that the sun rose from the west than to believe this scene. It was so much so that many people had an absurd thought in their minds. Is this mysterious black-robed old man really our Xiao clan's patriarch? Could it be that he's an imposter? This thought flashed across everyone's minds and was quickly thrown to the back of their minds. After all, the black-robed old man's white hair reached his waist. His eyes were as deep as the stars, and he exuded a mysterious and vast aura that was connected to heaven and earth. This was a unique aura that only an extraordinary expert, an elder who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, possessed. The Xiao clan's patriarch finally spoke. He looked around and the first sentence that came out of his mouth stunned everyone in the Xiao clan. I believe that at this moment, most people are wondering why this guy named Tianqing doesn't kneel down and greet him. These words clearly resonated with the hearts of thousands of people. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the Xiao clan's patriarch. Their eyes were filled with anticipation as they desperately wanted to know the answer. A playful smile appeared on the wrinkled old face of the Xiao clan's patriarch as he calmly announced the answer. Because his surname isn't Xiao at all. Our Xiao clan is not qualified to have such a monstrous genius. The voice of the Xiao clan's patriarch was not loud, but it clearly spread out within a radius of 5 kilometers, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. Suddenly, the thousands of people in the square all showed an expression of sudden realization, exclaiming and discussing. I see. This fellow isn't from our Xiao clan. That's why he didn't greet the old ancestor. No wonder this guy is so arrogant. He actually dared to kill Xiao Zhan, his son, and Xueqi in front of our entire tribe. That's not right. This fellow isn't from our Xiao clan. What right does he have to enter our Xiao clan? This has broken the rules set by the old ancestor. Xiaoling, Er's expression changed as well. Her clear eyes widened, revealing a look of as expected. Just as I expected, Brother Tianqing isn't from our Xiao clan. No wonder he's so monstrous. When has our Xiao clan ever produced such an outstanding genius? When thousands of Xiao clan members were discussing, the Xiao clan's patriarch pointed at Ji Tianqing and said in a deep voice, he's the #1 genius of the human race. He's also the #1 genius of the monarch mansion. He's the pride of the human race. He's also my friend. I haven't cared about worldly affairs for hundreds of years. I've been in seclusion, comprehending the mysteries of heaven, just to wait for his arrival. After hearing this news in secret, everyone in the Xiao clan was inexplicably shocked as they exclaimed. Even the elders were shocked to the point that they were dumbstruck. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Gosh! This fellow is actually friends with our old ancestor? How is this possible? Our old ancestor has lived for thousands of years. This fellow is at most 20 years old, right? Are you guys dumb? Didn't you hear what the old ancestor said? He's been waiting for this fellow for hundreds of years. This is too inconceivable. It's just like a fairy tale. No wonder Xiao Han personally led this fellow into the Xiao clan. No wonder this fellow is so arrogant and doesn't take the elders seriously. Oh my gosh! The #1 genius of the human race and the old ancestor's friend. What kind of freak is this fellow? I just want to know what's this fellow's name. Ji Tianqing ignored the thousands of Xiao clan members and looked at the Xiao clan's patriarch calmly. He asked with a playful smile, Senior, I just killed 3 disciples of the Xiao clan in front of everyone. The 3 of them are your descendants. Aren't you afraid that your descendants will have an opinion if you say that I'm your friend? As he spoke, he glanced at the corpses on the arena. The corpses of Xiao Zhan, Xiao Chong, and Xueqi were already cold, but they were still lying on the arena. Chapter 1191. The figure of the Xiao clan's patriarch disappeared into the night sky and drifted away. A long time after he left, the invisible pressure that lingered in the square gradually dissipated. Thousands of Xiao clan members stood up one after another and whispered to each other. The topic of everyone's discussion revolved around Ji Tianqing and the Xiao clan's patriarch. But even if they racked their brains, they could not figure out how a 20-year-old peerless genius could be friends with the Xiao clan's patriarch, who had lived for thousands of years. Recalling what had happened previously, the Xiao clan members still had lingering fear in their hearts. They looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of reverence. At this moment, no one dared to criticize Ji Tianqing anymore. Everyone was filled with curiosity and reverence towards him, sizing him up without blinking. The other elders also calmed down and gathered around the third elder, asking about his injuries and the condition of his body. The third elder did not hide anything and happily told everyone that it was Tianqing who had healed his injuries and allowed him to recover his cultivation. When everyone heard this miraculous news, they immediately exclaimed in disbelief and started discussing. Not long after, the atmosphere in the square eased up. The first elder sent a few guards to drag the corpses of Xiao Zhan and the other 2 down and clean up the blood on the arena. Then, he announced loudly, Everyone, this year's Holy Fire Festival is not over yet. Leave the rest of the time to the young men and women of our clan. Young men and women who want to receive the approval and blessings of our clan members, please bravely go up to the arena and tell your story and wish in public. After saying that, he led the elders out of the arena. The arena became empty, waiting for the brave young disciples to declare the love in their hearts in front of everyone. However, everyone was still immersed in the shock from before and were still whispering to each other. Those young men and women who were prepared to take this opportunity to confess were only focused on discussing Ji Tianqing and the Shao clan's patriarch. They even forgot to go up to the arena to confess. After a long time, a graceful figure walked through the crowd and went up to the arena. Everyone's gaze was attracted, and they all looked towards that graceful figure. After seeing that graceful, pure and lovely figure, the crowd immediately broke out into a series of discussions. Oh my God, it's Xiaoling. What is she doing? Is she going to confess to someone? Wow! Our Shao clan's #1 beauty, Xiaoling, who countless young disciples yearn for even in their dreams, actually took the initiative to confess to someone? Without a doubt, the young woman that bravely walked up the ring under the gazes of everyone was precisely Xiaoling. She lowered her head slightly, her cheeks flushed red. She shyly walked to the ring and stood there, not daring to speak. Perhaps because she was too shy, she kept her head down and didn't dare to look at anyone. Her hands even brushed the long hair on her temples. Her subconscious action was only to relieve her embarrassment and shyness, but it made her reveal a trace of a charming beauty amidst her innocence and cuteness. Instantly, countless young men in the square stared at her without blinking. Everyone was filled with anticipation, eager to know what she was going to say and do. Ji Tianqing stood in the crowd and looked at Xiaoling with a calm expression. A faint smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Xiao Chen stood beside him and also looked at Xiaoling on the stage. He silently waved his fist and cheered for Xiaoling. He had liked Xiaoling for many years but had never expressed his feelings all along. Xiaoling's attitude towards him was only that of a friend or brother. Although he guessed what Xiaoling was going to say, he felt a little jealous and sour in his heart. However, he also believed that Xiaoling's choice was the right one. He was willing to support and encourage Xiaoling. After all, the love rival by his side was too outstanding. She was as dazzling as the stars in the sky, and people could only look up to her. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen tilted his head and looked at Ji Tianqing who was beside him. Finally, when thousands of people were staring at Xiaoling, and the sounds of discussion were getting louder and louder, she finally opened her mouth to speak. She gathered a great deal of courage and bravely raised her head. She looked straight at Ji Tianqing in the crowd and said with a sincere voice, "Brother Tianqing, I don't know if the current me still has the qualifications to call you that. Even now, I still don't know what your real name is, but I have a lot of things to say to you." When her clear, clean and pleasant voice rang out, the entire square quietened down. Countless people guessed what Xiaoling was going to say and looked at Ji Tianqing in unison. Ji Tianqing, who was in the crowd, became the focus of the crowd once again. He was as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Even the 9 elders, Xiao Han, and the others were smiling as they looked at Xiaoling and Xiaoling. They were secretly discussing with each other via voice transmission. Xiaoling took a deep breath and continued, "Brother Tianqing, I have always wanted to leave the Shao clan. I wanted to see a wider world and see the wonders of the world. This has always been my wish, and it is also the motivation that supports me to train hard in the martial way. Thank you for helping me achieve my wish, for fulfilling my dream. If I didn't meet you, my life wouldn't be so wonderful." After she finished speaking, she looked at Ji Tianqing with a sincere gaze and bowed deeply. Ji Tianqing looked at her with a smile and nodded slightly in greeting. Xiaoling seemed to have received a great encouragement. There were actually traces of tears in her clear eyes. She said emotionally, "Brother Tianqing, before I met you, my life had always been monotonous and dull. It was like a world of black and white. It was only until I met you that my life became colorful. Although we have only known each other for a short period of time, I will always remember your every word, every expression, and every smile in my heart. I know that you will be leaving the Shao clan soon. You still have very important things to do. You are a world-renowned peerless genius. You are as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Your brilliance makes millions of girls in the world feel ashamed of their inferiority. I am also one of them. However, the Holy Fire Festival is our Shao clan's grandest celebration. If I don't say the words in my heart tonight, I will regret it for the rest of my life. I don't want to leave behind any regrets. Therefore I want to say, Brother Tianqing, I like you. No matter how outstanding you are, I will work even harder to catch up with you and get closer to you." Xiaoling mustered up a great deal of courage before she said the words that were hidden in her heart. This moment was the boldest and bravest moment in her life. When she said these words, her face turned red all the way to her neck. Her heart almost stopped beating. She was so embarrassed that she found it hard to breathe. These sincere and touching words had exhausted all her strength. After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but lower her head. She didn't dare to look at Ji Tianqing's expression. Her heart was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. Her fingers were intertwined as she waited for Ji Tianqing's response. The thousands of Shao clan members in the square were stunned for a moment before they cheered and discussed noisily. Chapter 1192. The Shao clansmen in the square had different opinions and were in an uproar. Damn it! Our Shao clan's #1 beauty was abducted by an outsider just like that. So many young talents in our clan failed to move her, but she took the initiative to confess to this fellow. It's too infuriating. That's right. Our clan's young talents pursued her for many years, but she remained unmoved. I didn't expect her to fall in love with this fellow at first sight after knowing him for only a few days. Everyone stop sighing. Look at that young Master Tianqing. How suave and handsome is he? What is his strength and identity? Are our Shao clan's young disciples worthy of Ling'er? It has to be a peerless genius like young Master Tianqing. That's right. Young Master Tianqing is the #1 genius in the continent and is friends with our Shao clan's patriarch. Many beauties admire such a lofty figure. Most of the young disciples were pounding their chests and stamping their feet. They were incomparably jealous and envious of Ji Tianqing. However, some of the older elders of the Shao clan were in favor of this matter and were optimistic about it. Right when everyone was discussing animatedly and Xiao Linger was waiting with a heart full of anxiety, Ji Tianqing finally spoke. With a trace of a gentle smile on his face, he looked at Xiao Linger with a sincere gaze and said, Miss Ling, although I've only known you for a few days, I can see and feel that you're a very special girl. You're pure and kind, smart and cute. You're also very straightforward. You're a good lady who dares to love and hate. It's a pity that I'm destined to let you down because I already have a wife. She's the person I've decided to spend the rest of my life with. I can't and won't let her down. I think it's more suitable for us to be friends. His expression and tone made people feel a strong sense of sincerity. It made people feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. However, the content of his words made Xiao Linger cry instantly. Her face turned pale, and her body trembled slightly. The thousands of Shao clan members in the square also changed their expressions as they exclaimed and discussed. Oh my god! This fellow actually rejected Xiao Linger? Xiao Linger is the #1 beauty in our Shao clan. How is she not worthy of him? We bitterly pursued Xiao Linger for many years, but she didn't even spare us a glance. She confessed to young Master Tianqing, but was heartlessly rejected? The heavens are blind. Sigh. What a pity. The two of them are so compatible. It's a pity that young Master Tianqing already has a wife. What an ill-fated relationship. A peerless genius like young Master Tianqing should have many female confidants. He actually didn't accept Xiao Linger and is loyal to his wife. Isn't his wife too blessed? Even an ordinary rich family would have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Young Master Tianqing, just take Xiao Linger in. Even if she's a concubine, it's fine. Many of the Shao clansmen felt that it was a pity. Many of the young disciples heaved a sigh of relief. They were happy to see this. In their opinion, since Ji Tianqing had rejected Xiao Linger, they still had a chance to pursue Xiao Linger. Xiao Linger, who was in the arena, stared blankly at Ji Tianqing. Her eyes were filled with disappointment, and they were filled with sparkling tears that kept sliding down her cheeks. However, she still maintained her smile and nodded at Ji Tianqing. Her voice was a little choked as she said, Big brother Tianqing, I really envy your wife for being able to obtain your exclusive love and care. Thank you for giving me such a beautiful memory and changing my fate. I wish you and your wife a happy and loving life forever. If Big brother Tianqing doesn't mind, let's be good friends. Is that okay? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Xiao Linger was greatly encouraged, and the pain in her heart lessened a lot. She hesitated for a moment and continued to ask, Big brother Tianqing, can you tell me what your real name is? Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing said these 3 words word by word. After saying that, he turned around, stepped over the crowd, and flew into the night sky, drifting far away. Xiao Linger stood on the arena and looked up at his departing figure. She muttered, Ji. All right. I will remember this name forever. Thank you. After a while, she recovered her senses and quickly wiped the tears off her pretty face. Then, she quickly left the plaza. Only a few thousand Xiao clan members remained, still surrounding the plaza, unwilling to leave. They were still discussing. Unknowingly, a night passed. This night was not peaceful. Many things happened. It could be said that there were many twists and turns, ups and downs. Ji Tianqing's name spread throughout the Xiao clan. Everyone knew about him. In the Xiao clan, regardless of gender or age, everyone was discussing him and his deeds that night. Clearly, he had left an indelible impression on the Xiao clan. They would not forget him for the next 100 years. At noon, the third elder led Xiao Ling and Xiao Chen to pay a visit to Xiao Han. These two young geniuses had already received the generous rewards from the Xiao clan. Next, they would leave the Xiao clan with Xiao Han and head to the vast and bustling central province to start a new chapter in their lives. After discussing the itinerary and plan, they decided to depart early the next morning. At that time, Xiao Han would bring Ji Tianqing, Xiao Ling and Xiao Chen. The four of them would leave the Xiao clan together. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room. A dazzling spiritual light suddenly descended from the sky and flew in front of him at the speed of light. Swoosh! This dazzling white light wrapped around a jade slip. It was the communication jade slip that he had left for Yun Yao. Yao Yao sent me a message? Did something happen? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. He reached out to pick up the communication jade slip and inserted his spiritual energy into it. Immediately, he saw an image. In the image was a secret room with dim light. Yun Yao was wearing a silver-white dress and sitting in the middle of the room. Her appearance was still beautiful, and her aura was even more sacred and noble. She was surrounded by the surging aura of a transcendent expert. There was a hint of a smile in her eyes, and she was a little emotional. She said in a gratified tone, "Tianqing, I have good news to tell you. I have successfully broken through the shackles and reached the soul-tempering realm. The pearl in my mind previously made me change a lot. After I broke through to the soul-tempering realm, I felt the uniqueness of the pearl. Moreover, my spiritual energy is different from ordinary soul-tempering realm experts. Even my spiritual energy Dharma eyes are different." When Ji Tianqing heard this news, he immediately felt gratified and smiled. He thought to himself, "That's great. Yao Yao has finally broken through to the soul-tempering realm. She has the Neptune divine pearl and is the reincarnation of the Yaoguang goddess. Of course, her spiritual energy is different." At this moment, Yun Yao in the image continued, "Tianqing, the situation in the central province is stable now. All the races are fighting against the demon race and are doing their best to resist the invasion of the demon race." Chapter 1193. Ji Tianqing stowed the jade slip away after reading Yun Yao's message. He pondered silently for a while. The situation on the central plain is stable right now. Even if I return, there's nothing for me to do. I can only cultivate in seclusion. Why don't I meet up with Yao Yao and head to the Godfall Cliff and the Eastern Sea's bottomless chasm together to search for the Neptunian divine pearl? After making up his mind, he thought about the geography of the continent and came up with a plan. He picked up the jade slip and used the power of his soul to input information into it. "Yao Yao, I've already finished my business. I don't plan on returning to the central plain either. I have something even more important to do. I need your help with this, so you should leave as soon as possible. We'll meet up at Heavenly Swaying City. I'll be there in half a month at most. I'll be waiting for you in the city. I won't leave until I see you." With that, he poured his magic power into the communication jade slip and released it. Swish! The communication jade reduced to a streak of light and shot into the sky, vanishing very soon. Ji Tianqing stood up, tidied his clothes, and stepped out of the room. He entered Xiao Han's room and saw him in the study. Xiao Han sat alone in the study as he pondered something. Seeing Ji Tianqing arrive, he hurriedly dismissed his thoughts and greeted Ji Tianqing. He asked, "Tianqing, you've come at the perfect time. I just happened to have something to talk to you about." "What a coincidence. I just happened to have something to talk to you about as well." Ji Tianqing smiled and sat down beside him. Xiao Han raised an eyebrow. He smiled. "Oh? What is it? Tell me first." Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He cut straight to the chase. I've already finished my business in the Xiao clan this time, but I have something even more important. As a result, I won't be waiting for you. I'll be leaving soon. I've come to bid farewell to you this time. Ha! Xiao Han immediately frowned. He asked in surprise, Tianqing, you're not returning to the Central Plain with us? I was just about to say that we'll set off together tomorrow morning. Pausing for a moment, he looked at Ji Tianqing with a playful gaze. He lowered his voice and said, Tianqing, are you worried that if you go back with us, you will feel awkward facing Linger? Ji Tianqing shook his head and chuckled. Divine Commander, what are you thinking? Of course that's not the reason. I'm not going back to the Central Plains. I'm going to look for an ancient ruin. Only then did Xiao Han reveal a look of understanding. He smiled and nodded, saying, So that's how it is. All right then, I won't keep you any longer. Let's get down to business. Lord Divine General. Then I will take my leave. Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and bowed to him. Xiao Han also stood up and nodded. Tianqing, I'll send you off. After that, he left Tingfeng Garden with Ji Tianqing and flew toward the exit of the Xiao clan. Not long after, the two of them reached the exit. Xiao Han cast a spell to activate the array, and a dazzling door of white light appeared in the sky. Tianqing, take care. See you again. Xiao Han cupped his fists and smiled at Ji Tianqing. See you again. Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and returned the greeting. He turned around and stepped into the door of light, leaving the Xiao clan. Swoosh! In the next moment, he appeared in the sky above Gemini Island. His sleeves fluttered as he flew high into the sky. He stepped on the vast sea of clouds and flew toward the northeast. When the Monarch Mansion Master gave him the mission, he had given him information about the Fallen God Cliff and the Sun and Moon Furnace. According to the information, the Fallen God Cliff was located in the mountains in the east of the mainland, between the Central Plains and the Eastern Sea. In that area, there were tens of thousands of towering mountains and peaks. The mountains were stacked on top of each other, rising and falling continuously. Many of the peaks were tall and steep. They stood between the heavens and the earth, and most of them were covered by white clouds and thick fog. There were many demons and giant beasts in the mountains, as well as some mysterious ancient races. Although the Fallen God Cliff was not as dangerous as the Great Swamp of the Southern Wilderness and the returning ruins of the Eastern Sea, it was still a dangerous forbidden area. Ordinary experts could not enter. The Fallen God Cliff was in the deepest part of the Fallen God Cliff. It was very mysterious and hidden. It was said that in ancient times, the Fallen God Cliff was a hilly area with relatively flat terrain. However, the Great War of the Gods broke out. Many gods fought in the 9 heavens, causing the sun and moon to dim and the stars to fall. The fierce battle tore through the sky, causing tens of thousands of meteors to fall. Meteors from outer space landed in the Fallen God Cliff, burning the area. The ground was also blasted with tens of thousands of craters and cracks. From then on, the area became a mountain range with valleys and abysses everywhere. There was even a powerful deity who had fallen in the great battle. The fragments of the god's body and divine artifact fell below a tall mountain like meteors. That was how the name Fallen God Cliff came about. This legend originated from far too long ago, so it was impossible to verify its authenticity even now. However, Ji Tianqing would rather believe it to be true than not. He had to go to the Fallen God Cliff and investigate the matter. This matter was related to the Neptunian divine orb, as well as Yun Yao's life. He obviously had to be careful. Time passed quickly. 5 days passed very quickly. On the morning of the 6th day, Ji Tianqing left the great swamp of the southern wilderness. He continued towards the northeast, heading straight for Heavenly Swaying City. As he traveled, he found some time to check on the Little Black Dragon and Qian Yu's situation. Ever since the Little Black Dragon and Qian Yu had devoured the Phoenix Sacred Heart, they had been refining it in the world within the sword. So many days had passed, but the two of them were still in seclusion. Although they had still failed to refine the Phoenix Sacred Heart, their strength and cultivation were rapidly increasing. Ji Tianqing estimated that they would need around 3 months at the very least to completely refine the Phoenix Sacred Heart. It could not be helped. After all, it was a divine artifact left behind by the Phoenix. How could it be refined so easily? Unknowingly, 14 days passed. On this evening, Ji Tianqing finally arrived at Heavenly Swaying City. This was an ancient city with 1,000 years of history. Its dark brown walls were mottled, and it was surrounded by tall mountains. Although the city was not very large, and the population was less than 1 million, it possessed a heavy heritage and atmosphere of martial arts. After all, this was the city closest to the 10,000 mountains. The cultivators who wanted to venture into the 10,000 mountains to search for treasures, gather herbs, and hunt demonic beasts would all rest in heavenly swaying city. In the old and simple city, there were shops related to martial artists everywhere, selling all kinds of resources and materials that martial artists needed. Most of the people on the streets carried blades and swords. They gave off the sharp presence unique to cultivators. Ji Tianqing was rather special. He strolled through the city empty-handed, strolling around leisurely. He did not carry any weapons, and he was handsome and elegant. He wore white robes, which made him seem like a noble young master. However, he gave off an invisible presence that made people feel reverence and respect. Chapter 1194. After Ji Tianqing entered Sky Swang City, he found an inn to stay for the time being. Since he had nothing to do, he waited for Yun Yao while gathering information in the city. He sat in a tea house and drank tea. He used a little bit of his soul power to hear all the sounds within a few thousand meters. Soon, he heard that many powerful adventurers and experts were discussing a strange matter. In their conversation, they mentioned the 10,000 mountains range and myths, which immediately piqued his interest. Therefore, he listened attentively, trying to find out some useful information. In a private room on the 3rd floor of the tea house, a few primal core experts were discussing this matter in low voices. Brothers, do you all know about the strange thing that happened yesterday morning? Yes, now half of the people in Sky Swang City know about it. I heard about it too. It is said that yesterday morning, in the 10,000 mountains range, there was a dazzling rainbow light that lit up half the sky. I saw it with my own eyes yesterday morning. At that time when the sun rose, there was a dazzling rainbow light in the depths of the 10,000 mountains range that lit up half the sky. It was even more dazzling than the sun. Brothers, that mysterious rainbow light came from the depths of the 10,000 mountains range. Many people in the city said that it was the morning glow, but I definitely don't believe it. It was clearly a vision of heaven and earth. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing frowned, and a light flashed in his eyes. Many martial artists in the city are discussing this matter. They all said that they saw the rainbow light in the sky. It seems that this matter is true. The mysterious rainbow light in the depths of the 10,000 mountains range. Could it be related to the fallen god cliff? As he thought of this, he became more interested in this matter and listened even more attentively. The few Yuan Dan stage adventurers were still whispering amongst themselves. The old saying is right. Whenever there is a vision of heaven and earth, there must be a divine item that is born. If it is not a magical treasure, then it must be a rare mythical beast. I feel that the rainbow light is not simple. We need to investigate it. The 10,000 mountains range covers an area of 200,000 miles. The rainbow light in the depths of the mountain range is at least tens of thousands of miles away from Sky Swang City. If it wasn't for the birth of a divine object, what kind of light could illuminate the sky for tens of thousands of miles? I'm willing to bet that there's definitely an earth-shattering divine item in the depths of the mountain range. Everyone knows that there is an ancient legend in the 10,000 mountains. It is said that a god fell from the sky and fell into the mountains. In my opinion, it might be a divine artifact left behind by that god. After thousands of years, it has reappeared in the world. Alright, let's stop talking nonsense. Instead of guessing here, why don't we take a trip to the mountains and see for ourselves? Hey, let's just talk about it. Are you really going to look for it in the mountains? Second brother, don't be rash. We all know how dangerous the 10,000 feet mountain range is. If we meet a demonic beast king, we will all die. Now that a strange phenomenon had appeared, countless experts had rushed to the depths of the mountain range to investigate the truth. If we join in the fun now, what's the difference between that and seeking death? Yes, what third brother said makes a lot of sense. I've already asked around. Last night, over 100 experts and more than a dozen powerhouses quietly entered the mountain. If we go in now to investigate, I'm afraid we will be killed by others before we can find out the truth. You can't say that. In our line of work, we live on the edge of a knife. Wealth comes from danger. What if we are lucky enough to find a divine artifact or a divine beast? Wouldn't we be able to achieve great success? That's right. We are adventurers. If we are afraid of death and don't take risks, we will live without dreams. What's the difference between us and fat pigs? The few adventurers were very conflicted. After arguing for a long time, they still couldn't come to a conclusion. They were curious about the mysterious multicolored light within the 10,000 mountains range and wanted to investigate it. They harbored the dream of becoming rich overnight and soaring into the heavens. But they knew how dangerous the 10,000 feet mountain range was and didn't dare to join in the fun at this juncture. Ji Tianqing listened for a while and retracted his soul's strength. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of the spiritual tea. His lips curled into a faint smile. A mysterious light has appeared in the 10,000 feet mountain range, illuminating the sky for tens of thousands of miles. It is earth-shattering and extraordinary. Many experts and powerhouses have rushed to the depths of the mountain range to investigate the truth. Coincidentally, I encountered this incident. Interesting. He muttered to himself. Even if this didn't happen, I would still go to the depths of the 10,000 feet mountain range to look for the legendary fallen god cliff. Now that there is a heaven and earth vision, all the more I have to investigate it. However, he had already made up his mind to investigate the situation. He wasn't in a hurry. He had to wait for Yun Yao to arrive at Sky Swang City so that they could meet up and enter the mountain range together. Even if the heaven and earth vision had alerted countless experts and powerhouses, everyone had already entered the 10,000 feet mountain range. He wasn't worried. Chapter 1195. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for 2 days. Only on the evening of the third day did Yun Yao arrive in heavenly Swaying City. Both of them wore the Lingxi bracelet, so they could sense each other's presence as soon as they were within 1,000 kilometers of each other. As a result, there was no need for them to communicate. They found each other very quickly. The two of them met in the square in the city. They smiled as they stared at each other gently. Today, Yun Yao was still wearing a long white dress. Her waist-length black hair hung down to her waist, and a jade hairpin was inserted into her hair bun. Even though she had traveled all the way here, she seemed exhausted and travel-worn. However, this was still unable to hide her great beauty and her sacred noble bearing. Ji Tianqing studied her before extending his arms and pulling her into his embrace. He said gently, "Yao Yao, it's been a tiring journey. I've made you suffer." Yun Yao hugged him tightly as well. She shook her head gently. "It's not tiring at all. Instead, it's able to train my powers and help me consolidate my foundation as a martial artist." Ji Tianqing smiled. "You've changed a lot in over a month. You've become much prettier." Yun Yao's heart warmed. She rolled her eyes at him in a coquettish manner and said softly, "What a glib tongue." Ji Tianqing smiled and pulled her into the inn. As he walked, he said to her, "Yao Yao, you've traveled for half a month. You've used up a lot of your powers. Tonight, you should rest in the city. We'll leave after you've recharged your strength." Yun Yao nodded in agreement. Afterwards, she asked, "Tianqing, why are we meeting up here? Previously, you said in the communication jade slip that you wanted to do something very important and needed my cooperation. What is it?" Ji Tianqing brought her back to the room in the inn before explaining secretly, "Yao Yao, it's a long story. It's related to your life and your future as a martial artist. Let me explain slowly." Afterwards, he told Yun Yao about the matter of finding the Neptunian divine pearl in detail. After Yun Yao learned the whole story, she immediately felt incredulous and revealed a look of surprise. "The Neptunian divine pearl in my body is actually condensed from the Yaoguang goddess soul?" This was only her 7th fragment. Were there 6 other Neptunian divine pearls in the world? It's no wonder that I feel like I've changed so much after breaking through to the soul refinement realm. The effects of the Neptunian divine pearl are constantly being revealed. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a solemn expression, "Yao Yao, this is our biggest secret. Other than our parents, we can't let anyone else know. What I can be sure of is that you are the reincarnation of the ancient goddess Nacrolite. However, you have only inherited the 7th soul of the goddess, and your soul and memories have yet to awaken. Moreover, you only have 5 years left. You can only extend your lifespan by fusing with even more Neptunian divine pearls as soon as possible." At this point, he paused for a moment to give Yun Yao some time to calm down. However, Yun Yao remained relatively calm. She only frowned and revealed a sliver of worry. Ji Tianqing comforted her gently. "However, Yao Yao, don't worry. I'll do my best to find the Neptunian divine pearl for you. I won't let anything happen to you. Yeah. Tianqing, I believe in you. Yunyan also nodded sternly as she looked at him gently. She trusted Ji Tianqing deeply, even more than she trusted herself. After a moment of silence she asked, Tianqing, did you call me here to take me to find the Neptunian divine pearl? That's right. Ji Tianqing nodded. Outside Xueqi City is the 10,000 mountains. In the depths of the mountains is a mysterious Godfall cliff. He told Yunyan about the legends of the Godfall cliff and the resplendent glow he had personally witnessed. Yunyan also found it very unbelievable after hearing that. Her eyes shone brightly as she became eager. Tianqing, even if it's not a god artifact, it's still a treasure of the same grade to be able to cause a phenomenon like the resplendent glow. Do you think it's possible that the Neptunian divine pearl caused this phenomenon? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. I've thought of that before, and I think it's very possible. If that's really the case, then that's fantastic. We have to obtain it no matter what. Yunyan held his hands and said, Tianqing, let's enter the 10,000 mountains as soon as possible, just in case someone else gets there first. Ji Tianqing shook his head. There's no need to hurry. The people who have entered the 10,000 mountains first are all origin core cultivators. Only a few of them are at the heaven's origin realm. With their strength, it's impossible for them to obtain the Neptunian divine pearl. They might not even be able to find it. The matter at hand is for you to meditate and recover your strength. We'll set off tomorrow morning. All right, we'll do as you say. Yunyan nodded in agreement without hesitation. After that, she consumed a few soul-grade pills and sat cross-legged on the bed to recover her strength. Ji Tianqing sat down beside her. As he closed his eyes and rested, he silently nurtured the strength of his spirit. The night passed without a word. The next morning, the two of them left Xueqi City together and flew into the 10,000 mountains. As soon as they entered the mountains, they saw that the mountains were shrouded in clouds and mist. There were straight and steep mountains everywhere. The mountains were like huge stone pillars or swords. They stood on the ground and pointed straight at the sky. Fortunately, the mountains were not bare. They were covered in trees, flowers, and vines. Many demonic beasts were active in the mountains. There were even birds flying in flocks. Ji Tianqing and Yunyan were both at the soul-tempering realm. They radiated with invisible soul power. The weaker demonic beasts did not dare to get close to them, no matter how many of them there were. They were intimidated by their auras. The two of them flew deep into the mountains. Along the way, they saw many martial artists. Those martial artists were from Xueqi City. They risked their lives to enter the 10,000 mountains in order to find out the secret of the 10,000-mile sunset glow. Many of them were unlucky. They were attacked by a large group of demonic beasts. They were torn into pieces and died in the mountains. Some of them who were lucky enough to escape were severely injured. They retreated from the 10,000 mountains and fled back to Xueqi City. Only the Sky Origin Realm elites were qualified to enter the mountains to search for the traces of the divine item. Ji Tianqing and Yunyan flew for about 50,000 miles before they gradually slowed down. They were already in the depths of the 10,000 mountains. The surrounding mountains were even more steep. There were abysses and canyons everywhere. It was very dangerous. Origin core demonic beasts appeared frequently. There were even Sky Origin Realm demon kings. Even Sky Origin Realm elites had to be careful. They had to be careful. Otherwise, they might lose their lives. Ji Tianqing and Yunyan released invisible soul power to cover the surrounding mountains and valleys. They searched carefully. Unknowingly, an entire day had passed. When night fell, the world was dark. The two of them found nothing. Other than the nests of many powerful demonic beasts, they did not detect the aura of the divine item. Yunyan nodded and said, Tianqing, although you have determined that the origin of the 10,000-mile sunglow is here, this is only a preliminary guess. This area is too vast. We have to split up to find the source of the multicolored light faster. Ji Tianqing frowned. He said rather worriedly, that might not be appropriate. This place is too dangerous. We don't even know what dangers there are. I don't feel safe splitting up. Yunyan looked at him firmly and comforted him. Tianqing, don't worry about me. I just want to gain some experience, so it makes sense for me to take risks. Moreover, I'm extremely sensitive to the presence of Neptunian divine pearls. If there really is a Neptunian divine pearl hidden here, I'll definitely be able to find it very quickly. Ji Tianqing only nodded after a moment of consideration. That works too. Be careful. If anything happens, contact me immediately. With that, the two of them split up. One of them flew to the south, while the other flew to the north. Both of them slowed down. As they flew through the air, they released the power of their souls to investigate the surroundings. They began a carpet search. Very soon, an hour passed. The two of them had searched over 1,000 kilometers. They were getting further and further away. Ji Tianqing did not come across any danger, but he did not gain anything either. He did not find any clues. However, at this moment, Yun Yao ran into trouble. When she flew past a mountain peak that was as straight as a sword, two huge and ferocious birds suddenly flew out of a cave in the cliff. These two birds were pitch black in color and were 100 meters long. They had 2 heads and 4 wings. They looked a little like eagles, but their eyes were fiery red. Flames surged in their eyes. Flames also surged between their claws. These 2 Demon King-level beasts were called Spirit Fire Vultures. They were as strong as experts in the 8th tier of the Heaven Origin stage. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Spirit Fire Vultures were extremely fast. When they flew out of the cave, they turned into 2 black shadows. They charged at Yun Yao from the left and right, attacking her. They stretched out their hook-like beaks and opened their blade-like claws. They clawed at Yun Yao with unparalleled power. Yun Yao had been vigilant. When the 2 Spirit Fire Vultures suddenly attacked, she immediately realized the danger. She did not hesitate at all. Almost subconsciously, she retreated. A silver light flashed in her palm, and the cold moon sword appeared. Vast and mighty spiritual power was injected into the cold moon sword. Suddenly, the sword lit up with silver moonlight and released a cold breath. Essence of the moon! She shouted in a low voice. She waved the cold moon sword in her hand and slashed out 100-meter-long crescent-shaped arc light. Swoosh! The bright crescent-shaped arc light cut through the cloud-filled sky and instantly hit the Spirit Fire Vulture on the left. With a muffled bang, the Spirit Fire Vulture was slashed and flew out. It crashed into the towering mountain peak, splashing rocks all over the sky. A long and narrow wound appeared on its chest, revealing the white bones. Dark red blood spurted out like a fountain and sprinkled in the sky. Yun Yao only used one move to severely injure the Spirit Fire Vulture. It screamed in anger and pain. At the same time, the Spirit Fire Vulture on the right swooped in front of Yun Yao. Its huge claws covered her head and were about to tear her to pieces. At the critical moment, she did not hesitate to use her Divine Soul Dharma Eye and blasted it at the Spirit Fire Vulture. After she broke through to the first level of the Soul Refining Realm, what she condensed was not a Divine Soul Dharma Eye, but a bright silver ball of light. It was like a star that had shrunk countless times. Its light was dazzling, and it emitted an extremely cold breath. Yun Yao called it the Star Dharma Eye. Bang! With a muffled bang, the house-sized Star Dharma Eye hit the Spirit Fire Vulture and sent it flying. This Spirit Fire Vulture's fate was even worse. A huge bloody hole was blasted in its chest by the Star Dharma Eye. Its neck was also shattered. It only had its head left. Blood flowed from all over its body. Countless feathers burst out and fell from the sky. It also screamed and flew back. It crashed into the mountain peak, splashing dirt and stones everywhere. The dangerous mountain peak, which was thousands of meters high, also shook violently. A large part of it collapsed and was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 1197. Moonblade Sky Attack. Yun Yao waved her cold moon sword and slashed out 2 beams of moonlight that were hundreds of meters long. They fell from the sky and attacked the 2 Spirit Fire Vultures. Bang bang! With muffled sounds, the 2 Spirit Fire Vultures' wings were cut off by the moonlight blades. Huge wounds were added to their bodies. Blood spurted out, and their injuries became even more serious. Starry swords! Yun Yao shouted coldly. She controlled the huge starry magic eye and released hundreds of thousands of silver sword auras at the 2 Spirit Fire Vultures. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Sharp, ear-piercing sounds rang out. The sky within a radius of thousands of meters was filled with silver sword auras, turning into a starry space. This scene was incomparably dazzling, and it made one's heart tremble. But the power of the thousands of starry swords was also terrifying, like the might of the heavens. With muffled sounds of bang bang bang, the two spirit fire vultures were torn to pieces by the sword auras. Their huge bodies turned into minced meat and fell from the sky. The two spirit fire vultures that had lived for more than 300 years were easily killed by Yunyao just like that. She controlled the starry magic eye and released a powerful ultimate move without consuming much dermic power. Her face was still calm as usual. The special starry magic eye does have special effects and power. She murmured to herself, waved her hand, and withdrew the cold moon sword and the starry magic eye. Then, she continued to fly forward, releasing her soul power to carefully explore the surroundings. Within a radius of 10 miles, no matter if it was a steep mountain or a valley, nothing could escape her detection. After flying for 2,000 miles, she suddenly saw several powerful demon beasts gathered on a cliff not far ahead. The demon beasts included beasts that looked like tigers and leopards, as well as huge, strange-looking birds. They were all demon kings of the heaven origin stage. They were all gathered near the cliff, guarding against each other, and at the same time looking down the cliff, as if they were observing something. Yunyao quickly slowed down, restrained her aura, and quietly approached the cliff. He saw that the cliff was more than 5,000 meters high, and the 3 adjacent mountains surrounded an empty area with a radius of 100 miles. This empty area was shrouded in white clouds and thick fog, making it impossible to see the abyss below. The light at the bottom of the cliff was dim. Even during the day, the sunlight high up in the sky couldn't reach it. Yunyao didn't know how deep the abyss at the bottom of the cliff was. However, she could feel that the cliff was unfathomably deep and mysterious. Strange, the vicinity of this cliff looks rather ordinary, and there's no unusual situation or aura. Why have these demon kings gathered here? Yunyao furrowed her brows and muttered with a heart full of doubt. She vaguely felt that there might be some unknown secret hidden under this cliff. After all, the monster kings who lived in the 10,000 feet mountain range were more sensitive. They would not gather here for no reason. She quietly flew near the mysterious cliff and hid in the sea of clouds, quietly observing. He saw that the cliff was very steep, as if it had been cut off by a sword. It was straight and steep. Although the bottom of the cliff was shrouded in white clouds and thick fog, there were occasional colorful lights that tore through the thick fog and reflected in the sky. Vast and mighty spiritual chi of heaven and earth constantly surged from the bottom of the cliff, turning into an invisible breeze that stirred up the white clouds and the thick fog. Yunyao stared at the cliff in a trance. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind, and her eyes revealed a trace of surprise. I understand now. This is most likely the legendary falling god cliff. The colorful lights that lit up half the sky earlier most likely came from here. No wonder these demon beasts gathered here. They must have sensed the aura of the divine item long ago. Thinking of this, she quickly took out her communication jade slip and sent a message to Ji Tianxing. Swoosh! The communication jade simplified into a beam of light and quickly drilled into the sky, disappearing immediately. Although the beam of light disappeared in a flash, its movement was very weak. However, the 7 demon beasts near the cliff were all powerful demon kings, and they had been tense all this time. They were immediately alarmed and turned their heads to look at the place where Yunyao was hiding. Instantly, the 7 demon kings' hair stood on end. They stared at Yunyao fiercely and let out low and dangerous roars. The original tranquility was broken. The 7 demon kings instantly found a common enemy. They spread out and slowly approached Yunyao, about to attack her from all sides. Yunyao remained calm and collected. She slowly drew out the cold moon sword and stared at the demon kings warily. She made a sword gesture with her left hand and held the cold moon sword with her right hand. A star Dharma eye was floating behind her. An invisible, vast god soul power quietly spread out in all directions, intimidating the 7 monster kings. Sensing the aura of Yunyao's soul energy, the 7 demon kings were stunned. Their eyes were filled with fear. Even demon beasts that had reached the level of demon king had the corresponding intelligence and distinguishing ability. Of course, they knew that Yunyao was terrifyingly powerful. She was not someone they could defeat. However, none of the demon kings were afraid or retreated. They all stared at Yunyao and did not give in. After all, there were as many as 7 demon kings. Why would they be afraid of a mere human? Rustle, rustle, rustle. The demon kings stepped on the mountain peak and flew over the vast sea of clouds. They continued to approach Yun Yao. The distance between the two parties was getting closer and closer. The 7 demon kings had already surrounded Yun Yao, and were about to lose control of their violent killing intent. The atmosphere was getting tenser and tenser. The demon kings bared their fangs and claws. Their bodies were surging with violent auras. 100 seconds passed quickly. The 7 demon kings did not take the initiative to attack. Yun Yao did not attack either. She was still on guard. However, the tense atmosphere had reached its limit. It was so tense that it could snap at any time. If there was any movement, the 7 demon kings, who were ready to attack, would launch a thunderous attack. At this moment, a dazzling golden ray of light suddenly flew over from the horizon. It arrived in the sky at lightning speed. Within the golden ray of light was a handsome young man in a white robe. It was Ji Tianxing. His sudden arrival was like a fuse that instantly ignited the 7 monster kings in the field. Roar! 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 7 different beastly roars sounded at the same time. They exploded above the cliff and reverberated in the air. The 7 monster kings unleashed all of their strength. They extended their sharp claws and fangs as they charged towards Yun Yao with the intent to destroy the world. Dazzling true essence lights lit up. They were colorful and dazzling, but they were also deadly. The sky within a 20-mile radius was filled with streaks of light. It was a chaotic scene. Yao Yao, watch out! Ji Tianxing had just seen Yun Yao's figure. Before he could figure out what was going on, he saw the 7 demon kings attacking Yun Yao. Chapter 1198. Swish! 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 3 white divine soul dharma swords released more than 300 sword auras, which enveloped the 7 monster kings like a rain of arrows. Bam! 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 The 7 monster kings were stabbed by the sword auras. Their flesh and blood splattered everywhere as they screamed in agony. The monster kings, who had been baring their teeth and fighting fiercely a moment ago, were so weak that they couldn't even withstand a single blow from Ji Tianxing's sword auras. All of them were severely injured. Yun Yao keenly grasped this opportunity and decisively attacked. Galaxy Ribbon. She held the cold moon sword with both hands and channeled all her dharma power to form a 1,000-meter-long silver light belt in the sky. The light belt was 100 meters wide. Starlight flashed in it as if it was formed by thousands of stars. It was extremely beautiful and magical. Slash! As Yun Yao shouted, she held the sword in her right hand and slashed it down fiercely. Immediately, the river of stars in the sky slashed towards the demonic beasts with boundless heavenly might. Boom! 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 In the deafening sound, the 3 monster kings were killed on the spot. Their bodies completely collapsed and exploded into pieces of flesh and blood. The Galaxy Ribbon's power didn't diminish. It slashed the wide cliff again and created a 1,000-meter-long ravine on the ground. A small half of the mountain had collapsed, sending huge rocks and dust into the air, smashing into the cliff below along with a series of rumbling noises. Such earth-shattering might cause Ji Tianxing to raise his eyebrows as he looked at Yun Yao in disbelief. Gosh! What secret technique did Yao Yao use? How can it be so powerful? The inheritance of the ancient goddess is indeed extraordinary. His heart was filled with shock as this thought flashed across his mind. At the same time, he controlled 3 divine soul dharma swords to slash at the 3 monster kings. Swish! 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 The sword auras were bright and dazzling. The sharp sword chi split the sky and smashed countless huge rocks, hitting the 3 monster kings. The 3 demon kings were already heavily injured. After being slashed by the soul magic sword, they were split in 2 and fell down the cliff. Only the last demon king was left. It was a fiery red bird that was over 100 meters long. Its entire body was covered with bloody wounds so deep that its bones could be seen. Blood was gushing out from the wounds. One of its wings had also been cut off, leaving it with only 3 wings. Seeing the 6 monster kings being killed with its own eyes, it was scared out of its wits. It didn't dare to stay any longer. It immediately flapped its wings and flew into the distance, fleeing in panic. Ji Tianxing didn't have time to chase after it, but Yun Yao was already staring at it. When the crimson bird flew 1,000 meters away, she immediately manipulated her star dharma eyes to unleash an ice-cold beam of white light. The crimson bird didn't have time to dodge, and was immediately hit by the white light beam, exploding with a muffled bang. Boom! The crimson bird's body was engulfed by the white light beam. Its huge body disintegrated on the spot, turning into a rain of blood that fell down the cliff. The turbulence between heaven and earth, the deafening sound, and the hurricane that was stirred up by magic power and spiritual energy gradually calmed down and dissipated. Ji Tianqing hurriedly flew to Yun Yao's side and asked with concern, "Yao Yao, are you hurt?" Yun Yao felt warmth in her heart when she saw his concern. She hurriedly shook her head and said, "I'm fine. Tianqing, you don't have to worry." Ji Tianqing looked her up and down. Seeing that she was indeed fine, he was finally relieved. His gaze fell on the star Dharma eyes. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. He smiled and said, "Yao Yao, your soul Dharma eyes are very special. It's a bit like a miniature star?" Yun Yao nodded. She also smiled and said, "That's right. I can vaguely feel that there is a subtle connection between my Dharma eyes and the stars and moon in the sky. I have a feeling that when the power of my soul becomes stronger in the future, I might even be able to communicate with the power of the stars. So, I call it the star Dharma eyes." "You can communicate with the power of the sun, moon and stars?" Ji Tianqing was suddenly full of surprise. He revealed a look of disbelief. "My soul Dharma eyes are swords. I thought that was already strange enough. I didn't expect your soul Dharma eyes to be even more amazing. This is incredible. You really deserve to be the inheritance of the ancient goddess." Yun Yao revealed a faint smile. She shook her head gently and said, "Tianqing, these are just my speculations. I can't be sure for now." She was only halfway through her words when she was interrupted by a sudden loud noise. Boom! A blood-red flame burst out from the cliff behind the two of them. It was like a mushroom cloud that rose into the sky. The white clouds and thick fog that covered the cliff were dispersed by the blood-red flames, disappearing without a trace. The violent and unparalleled impact shook the surrounding mountains crazily. Cracks appeared on the mountains, and more than half of them collapsed. The earth-shaking noise interrupted the conversation between Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Both of their faces changed. They turned around and looked at the bottomless, mysterious cliff. They saw that the blood-red flame that soared into the sky covered the sky for hundreds of miles. It emitted an incomparably scorching power. The violent shockwave hit them head-on. Their clothes fluttered and their bodies shook a little. Fortunately, the two of them were strong enough to withstand the power of the shockwave. That was why they could stand firm. "What's going on? Is there a volcanic eruption below the cliff?" Yun Yao frowned doubtfully. She quietly released her soul Dharma eyes to explore the bottom of the cliff. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, "It shouldn't be a volcano. The aura of this blood-red flame seems to be the magic power of a powerful demon beast." "A powerful demon beast?" Yun Yao's face was a little serious. She said in a low voice, "With such powerful magic power, it must be a demon beast in the soul-refining realm." "Don't worry. Let's go down and take a look." Ji Tianqing held her hand and smiled confidently. Then, he took Yun Yao through the blood-red flame that covered the sky and flew down the cliff. To prevent any accidents, he controlled the 3 soul Dharma swords to float around and form a white sword net. At the same time, he also extended his soul Dharma eyes to explore the bottom of the cliff. The two of them quickly passed through the sky full of flames and thick clouds. Soon, they descended about 10,000 meters. However, they still hadn't reached the bottom of the abyss. They were still in the dark valley. The two of them slowed down their flying speed and continued to fly down the abyss. After about 30 breaths of time, the two of them descended another 100 miles and finally reached the bottom of the abyss. This place was 100 miles deep underground. It was dark all around. They couldn't see anything clearly. Only the rocky ground and the surrounding walls contained some rare ores and gems. They were emitting blue, red, and purple light. The air was extremely hot. It was filled with the smell of lava and sulfur. It was very suffocating. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood on a rock. They didn't act rashly. They were observing the situation around them. Chapter 1199. A sudden cracking sound broke the tranquility of the abyss. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao shuddered slightly and slowly turned their heads to the north. 20 miles to the south was a 100-mile tall cliff. It was the edge and the end of the abyss. The north was dark, and the terrain sloped downward like a passage leading to the abyss. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao used their soul power and immediately detected a giant figure lying in the dark abyss passage. It was a giant monster that was as black as ink and seemed to be made of rocks. It was hundreds of meters tall and looked like an old tortoise. It had a snake-like neck and head, and elephant-like limbs. It was also carrying a giant black shell on its back. It was crouching on the scorching ground with its eyes closed. Its flat and wide mouth was chewing on a pile of hairy flesh. There were dark red bloodstains, messy feathers, and broken bones on the ground under its body. Ji Tianqing knew that the stone tortoise was chewing on the corpses of demon beasts. Those demon beasts were the demon kings that he and Yun Yao had killed earlier. When he and Yun Yao saw the black stone tortoise, the stone tortoise also sensed their arrival and opened its eyes. Whoosh! A pair of dark green light balls 3 meters wide appeared in the darkness out of nowhere. They were flashing with cold, eerie light and terrifying green light. The stone tortoise's eyes were cold, indifferent, and bloodthirsty. It was intimidating. Yun Yao could feel its fierceness and brutality. She secretly gripped the cold moon sword and prepared to fight the enemy at any time. Ji Tianqing was not worried. He looked calm and murmured in a low voice, "This monster should be the legendary dark fire tortoise. It is said that this kind of ancient beast is a race left behind from the ancient times. It only lives in the depths of the earth and feeds on magma and earth fire. It is good at controlling heavenly wind and earthly fire. Its defense is extremely strong. It's a good thing that this dark fire tortoise is only at the 4th or 5th level of the soul refinement realm. It's nothing to us." Yun Yao raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Tianqing, if the dark fire turtle lives deep in the earth's core, why would it come here? Although this abyss is hundreds of miles deep, isn't it a little too close to the surface?" Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I don't know about that. Maybe there's something else." When his voice fell, the dark fire tortoise that was lying motionless on the ground suddenly opened its bloody mouth and let out a muffled sound. "Heh. You're a smart kid. You actually know so much. However, since you've trespassed into this emperor's territory, then obediently become this emperor's lunch." The dark fire tortoise's voice was muffled, and its words were not very clear. It sounded very awkward. Even so, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were still stunned and surprised. This old tortoise can actually speak human language? Tianqing, this dark fire tortoise is a little cunning. I don't think it's entrenched here. It's more like it's guarding this place. Guarding this place? Hearing Yun Yao's reminder, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and subconsciously looked behind the dark fire tortoise. Behind the dark fire tortoise was a pitch-black open space. It was like a passage that extended downwards at an angle. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something and said to Yun Yao through voice transmission, Yao, behind the old tortoise is a passage that seems to lead deep underground. If this is really the fallen god cliff and there's some rare divine item hidden here, then it's very likely that it's deep underground." "Yes, it's very likely." Yun Yao nodded in agreement and said through voice transmission, "Tianqing, it seems like we have to find a way to deal with this old tortoise before we can continue exploring." Just as she finished speaking, the dark fire tortoise had already lost its patience. It smacked its flat mouth, revealing 2 rows of white sharp teeth and fangs. It grinned coldly and said, "You 2 little guys, don't even think about discussing any countermeasures. It's all in vain. Accept your fate. Your auras are rich and your bodies are flawless. You're the best nourishment for me. Accept your deaths." After saying that, it opened its bloody mouth with all its might and spat out crimson lava that covered the sky and earth. It poured down like a torrential flood. An area of 10 miles was instantly flooded by endless lava. The crimson flames lit up an area of almost 100 miles and made the entire abyss extremely hot. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao didn't have time to dodge before they were swallowed by the torrential lava and fell into the sea of lava. At the critical moment, Yun Yao used her vast magic power and formed a moonlight shield outside her body to protect herself. Dazzling golden light also surged out of Ji Tianqing's body and formed a giant golden sword that was over 100 feet tall. It kept the endless lava at bay. His body and the giant sword became one as he unleashed a peerless power that broke through the sky of lava and blasted toward the dark fire tortoise. White Tiger Sacred Sword. As he let out a low roar, the giant golden sword expanded to over 100 meters long and formed the projection of a white tiger that was as large as a mountain. The dark fire tortoise's body was huge and its movement speed was a little slow. It didn't expect Ji Tianqing to be so powerful that he could break through the bombardment of lava. When it realized that something was wrong and wanted to dodge, it was already too late. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the giant golden sword struck it and sent it flying. It rolled over a dozen times and spat out lava and crimson flames. It flew for more than 5 miles before crashing to the ground. Thump! Another muffled explosion sounded out, and a huge gully was smashed into the ground. The entire abyss was shaking. A deep white mark was left on the dark fire tortoise's black shell. It was over 100 feet long. It groaned in pain and stomped its 4 limbs on the ground. It twisted its body desperately and its entire body burst into flames. Without a doubt, it was enraged. Its eyes turned from jade green to dark green and emitted a cold light. Little worm, you've successfully angered me. 4 decades, other than that bastard, no one has been able to hurt me. You're dead. I'm going to tear you into pieces, roast you into charcoal, and eat you little by little. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and looked down at the dark fire tortoise on the ground. He frowned in shock when he saw the wound on its back. That damned old tortoise. I used 80% of my strength, but it only left a white mark on its back? The legends were true. This dark fire tortoise's defense was really terrifying. But who was that bastard it was talking about? Did someone else come here? Chapter 1200. Ji Tianqing made up his mind to finish off the dark fire tortoise as soon as possible and explore the secret of the abyss passageway. He stopped talking to the dark fire tortoise and took out the broken sword. Burial of Heaven. Draw the sword. With a clang, the divine sword was unsheathed and released a sharp sword aura that filled the entire abyss. A dazzling white sword aura slashed at the dark fire tortoise with destructive power. The sword aura was hundreds of feet long, and it was as fast as the aurora. In an instant, the sword aura crossed dozens of miles in the sky and hit the dark fire tortoise. The dark fire tortoise didn't have time to react or dodge. Its neck and shell were hit by the sword aura. A muffled sound of defeat rang out. It was not earth-shattering, and it quickly dissipated. The dark fire tortoise's defensive power, which was unrivaled in the world, became extremely weak in front of this stunning sword strike. Its incomparably hard carapace was actually broken open on the spot, revealing its white bones and flesh. One could even faintly see its internal organs. Its neck, which was covered in black scales, was cut off by the sword aura. Black blood splattered everywhere. Its neck, which was dozens of feet long, and its flat head fell to the ground with a bang. Countless rocks and dust flew up. Even so, it wasn't dead yet. Its neck and head were still struggling and twisting on the ground. Ah! Damn little worm, I'm going to tear you apart. The dark fire tortoise roared furiously. Red flames surged on its neck. It flew to its body and tried to reconnect its wounds. Ji Tianqing didn't give it a chance to recover. He swung the broken sword again and stabbed at it. Stab! A cold star lit up the sky. The broken sword released an extremely condensed sword aura and disappeared into the darkness. Almost at the same time, the sword light crossed over a dozen miles and hit the dark fire tortoise's neck, right in the middle of the wound. Bang! That cold light that had been condensed to the limit suddenly exploded, bursting out with a power that could destroy the heavens and earth, exploding with a loud explosion. The dark fire tortoise's mountain-like body was instantly blasted into pieces, and pieces of flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. The sword directly pierced through its body and exploded inside. No matter how hard its shell was or how strong its defense was, it was useless. The muffled sound was still echoing in the abyss, and the sky was filled with pieces of flesh and blood that had already scattered all around, piling up into dozens of small hills. The fleshly body of the dark fire tortoise was completely destroyed. It was almost impossible for it to recover. Swish! A ball of blinding white light turned around and fled into the dark abyss passageway in a panic. It was the soul crystal of the dark fire tortoise. It was so scared that it didn't even dare to say a word. It just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and get away from Ji Tianqing, this terrifying guy. Ji Tianqing had long expected that its soul would not be destroyed, and it would definitely try to escape. When the ball of white light turned around to escape, he swung the broken sword for the 3rd time, slashing down with all his might. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the broken sword with both hands and unleashed endless magic power, slashing out a shocking sword light. This was the combination of mind, spirit, and soul, the combination of heaven, man, and sword. Swoosh! The blinding white sword light that was 100 meters long instantly cut through the dark sky and slashed the soul crystal of the dark fire tortoise. The soul crystal was shattered by the sword on the spot. It exploded into several pieces and scattered in all directions. The dark fire tortoise was completely destroyed. Ji Tianqing put away the broken sword, quickly flew over, picked up a few pieces of the soul crystal, and gave them to the burial of heaven to recover its power. Yun Yao quickly followed and praised, "Tianqing, ever since you reached the soul refinement realm, your sword skills have entered a whole new realm and become more and more amazing. I can feel that your sword skills have returned to the origin, and it already contains sword intent that belongs to you." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "Yao Yao, you are right. The soul refinement realm is different from the heaven origin realm. It is indeed a whole new realm. I am still practicing this divine-level sword skill, and I am still exploring and comprehending the sword intent. I believe that not long after, when I comprehend my own sword intent, the power of my sword skills will definitely rise to another level." Yun Yao nodded with gratification. "Although you are only at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm, your combat power is even stronger than my father's, comparable to the 7th level of the soul refinement realm." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "I have not fought with a 7th level soul refinement realm expert, so I can't verify it, but I believe that it is not far off." "Yao Yao, don't worry, you have just entered the soul refinement realm. Once you comprehend the mysteries of the soul refinement realm, you will also have extraordinary combat power like me. Because we are the most special and monstrous geniuses in this world." Yun Yao nodded and pointed at the dark area in front of them, saying, "Tianqing, the dark fire turtle has been killed, let's go take a look." "Okay." Ji Tianqing responded and quickly flew forward with her. The two of them followed the slanted abyss passageway and flew deeper into the ground. The deeper they went, the narrower the abyss passageway became. It gradually shrunk from 30 miles wide to 20 miles. In the end, when the two of them went 300 miles underground, the passageway had shrunk to only 10 miles wide. Moreover, the passageway was not straight, it was also twisted and turned. Ji Tianqing carefully observed the walls of the passageway and studied the ancient marks on the walls. He was sure that this mysterious abyss passageway had experienced at least tens of thousands of years. Moreover, the abyss passageway was not naturally formed, it was opened by some kind of power that was close to that of a god. This made him even more confused and expectant. What was at the deepest part of the passageway? What secrets were hidden there? Suddenly, Yun Yao reminded, "Tianqing, look in front of us, there's light. It looks like a light curtain." Ji Tianqing looked forward and saw a dim light curtain at the corner of the passageway 10 miles away. He rushed over with Yun Yao and examined it carefully. He found that the light curtain was a great ceiling formation. This was a soul-grade middle-grade great ceiling formation. It contained terrifying power, but its aura was restrained, so it was not easy to be detected. This 5-colored light curtain with a radius of 10 miles and a thickness of 3 meters completely sealed the passageway. The two of them could not see the situation at the deepest part of the passageway through the weak 5-colored light curtain. "Damn it! Who set up a great ceiling formation here and cut off our way forward?" Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and muttered in a sullen tone. Yun Yao carefully examined the great ceiling formation and said thoughtfully, "Tianqing, this great ceiling formation is obviously set up by a soul refinement realm expert. It looks not long ago." Chapter 12:01. The powerful ceiling formation blocked the abyss passageway. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's soul power couldn't penetrate the light curtain to check the situation inside. Even if they used their eyes to look, the passageway was dark and they couldn't see anything clearly. The two could only confirm that someone had entered the abyss passageway earlier than them and set up a ceiling formation here. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. Then, he opened his pure heart Dharma eye and carefully observed the formation, deducing and calculating the way to break it. Yun Yao stared at the ceiling formation for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of a possibility and her eyes lit up with joy. "Tianqing, this ceiling formation doesn't look like it was set up recently. It should have been set up many years ago. I have a guess. The dark fire tortoise was originally in the abyss passageway. A soul refinement realm expert came here and chased it out. Then, he set up a ceiling formation here. That dark fire tortoise couldn't break the ceiling formation, so it could only stay outside in the abyss. Do you think it's possible? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and nodded. It's possible. But we still don't know what's at the end of the abyss passageway. Is that soul refinement realm expert who got here before us still alive? Is he still in the depths of the passageway? Yun Yao frowned and thought for a long time. But she couldn't think of a reason. She could only say, everything is unknown. We can only break this formation to continue exploring. Tianqing, I'll help you break the formation. Ji Tianqing knew that her attainments in formations were not bad, so he nodded and agreed. Okay. Then, the two observed the ceiling formation together and discussed how to break it. Ji Tianqing was a formation master. He was proficient in the structure and arrangement of countless heaven essence grand formations. But after he stepped into the soul refinement realm, he had almost no time to improve his attainments in formations. Even though he had broken some soul-grade formations, they were all low-grade soul-grade formations. As for mid-grade soul-grade formations, he had only encountered a handful of them. His experience in breaking formations was very limited. The ceiling array in front of him and Yun Yao was not only a mid-grade soul-level array, but it was also very complicated to set up. Wanting to break this grand formation was simply too difficult. This was a huge challenge for Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The two of them carefully observed and studied for a long time, but they still couldn't find a way to break the formation. They discussed and discussed with each other several times, but they still had no clue. Unknowingly, an entire day had passed. The abyssal passageway was still silent and dark. In the dark tunnel, the two of them could not feel the passage of time, nor could they tell the difference between day and night. However, the two of them became more and more anxious and worried. Ji Tianqing could no longer hold himself back. With a grave expression he said, Yao Yao, we can't go on like this. I want to try and see if we can break through this barrier. Yun Yao considered for a moment and said with a solemn expression, Tianqing, this soul-grade mid-grade grand ceiling array is very powerful. Its defense is also very strong. With our strength, I'm afraid it's difficult to break through it. However, other than this method, we don't have any other ideas. You must be careful. Don't be swallowed by the power of the grand formation. Ji Tianqing nodded and motioned for her to take 100 steps back. Then, he took out the broken sword, Burial of Heaven. He held the broken sword in his hand and stared at the grand ceiling array. The incomparably violent magic power in his body continued to surge rapidly. As the magic power in his body gathered crazily, his meridians and body actually emitted a rumbling sound of thunder. His aura continued to rise, and his entire body vaguely revealed a soaring sword intent. It was incomparably fierce. After about 10 breaths of time, his essence, energy, and magic power were all raised to the limit. He finally waved the broken sword and slashed out with the most powerful sword. Heaven-splitting sword. A dazzling sword light that was 10 feet long lit up and illuminated the surroundings. A fierce wind also swept up in the air. Bang! The invincible sword light exploded with a power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It fiercely slashed the huge light screen and exploded with a loud bang. The deafening loud sound echoed in the dark tunnel. It shook the earth and the mountains in the surroundings, and countless gravel and dust fell. The incomparably violent recoil hit Ji Tianqing and forced him to take 5 steps back. His face was pale. The originally dim light screen was also shaken by this sword strike. Layers of ripples and ripples were formed. A palm-wide crack appeared, extending in all directions along with a series of cracking sounds. This soul-level middle-grade grand ceiling array couldn't withstand Ji Tianqing's full-force slash. It shook violently for a long time and didn't calm down. However, the light screen was at least 10 feet thick. Even if a palm-wide gully was slashed out, it still didn't break. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao still couldn't pass through the light screen. Seeing this result, Ji Tianqing sighed silently and could only put away the broken sword. He couldn't break the grand ceiling array with his full-force sword strike. He could only give up the idea of attacking by force. He could only continue to think of ways to break the grand ceiling array. After a while, the shaking 5-colored light screen gradually calmed down. Although the 5-colored light screen gradually recovered and returned to its original state. However, Ji Tianqing was keenly aware that there were some subtle changes in the internal structure of the grand ceiling array. More veins and array bases were exposed. This was something he didn't detect before. Now that he had a new discovery, it allowed him to understand the grand ceiling array more thoroughly. He stared at the grand ceiling array and observed for a while. Suddenly, his eyes shone brightly. He shouted in a low voice, "Great! I didn't expect this grand ceiling array to be so mysterious. It actually has a hidden secret. Fortunately, I slashed it with my sword and exposed more of its secrets. Otherwise, I might not be able to break it even if I spent 3 days and 3 nights." Yun Yao also discovered this situation and immediately became spirited. She nodded and said, "Tianqing, this is really a pleasant surprise. Now that we understand the grand ceiling array better, we have more hope of breaking it." The two didn't waste any more time. They hurriedly investigated the veins and structure of the entire grand ceiling array and discussed the way to break it. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing deduced the preliminary idea of breaking the grand ceiling array and began to try it. 10 hours later, his guess was confirmed. He had already gradually broken part of the grand ceiling array's structure. Yun Yao understood his method of breaking the grand ceiling array and helped him break the grand ceiling array. The two of them working together to break the grand ceiling array was faster. They could discuss and discuss while breaking the grand ceiling array. The efficiency was also higher. 16 hours later, the two of them finally succeeded in breaking the grand ceiling array. Swoosh! The huge 5-colored light screen lit up with dazzling 5-colored brilliance and shook violently. Following the disintegration of the grand ceiling array's internal structure, majestic and mighty magic power overflowed and blew a hurricane in the passageway. Roughly 10 breaths later, the 5-colored light screen within a radius of 10 miles completely dissipated. This soul-rank middle-grade grand ceiling array was cracked and cleared by Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao working together. Chapter 1202. Although Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had exhausted a lot of their dermic powers in order to break the formation, they were still able to do so. However, the two of them were in high spirits. They could not be bothered to rest and continued to fly deeper into the tunnel. The tunnel continued to slope deeper into the ground and became narrower and narrower. Around 15 minutes later, the two of them flew another 100 kilometers and finally arrived at the end of the tunnel. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them stopped flying and landed on the dark brown rocky ground. This was already the end of the tunnel. The ground before them seemed to have been cut off. Below them was a straight and steep cliff. Above them was an empty space with a radius of several dozen kilometers. It was dim, like a huge cave. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down. They saw that the cliff was only 1,000 meters deep. Below them was the rugged ground. The dark brown ground was littered with boulders and rocks. The air was filled with the heavy smell of saltpeter and sulfur. They could even see a smear of dark red in some of the cracks and ravines. The two of them could only see that it was red magma upon closer inspection. The ground with a radius of over 50 kilometers was like a rubble of rubble. Rubble was piled up everywhere and dark red magma flowed through it. No matter how they looked at it, this ancient and barren region did not seem like a place of treasures that hid divine artifacts. Yun Yao frowned in doubt. She silently released the power of her soul to investigate the situation of the barren land. She even murmured softly, "Strange. Why can't I sense the presence of the Neptunian divine orb?" Ji Tianqing stared at the barren land. After observing for a while, he suddenly discovered something. "Yao Yao, look over there." He pointed at the northwest corner of the barren land. His voice was rather surprised, and his eyes were filled with great anticipation. There was a smear of dark golden light in the northwest corner of the barren land. It hovered in the dark air. There seemed to be countless boulders piled up around the dark golden ball of light. There was even a powerful formation set up there. An indistinct dark red barrier of light enveloped the dark golden ball of light like an inverted bowl. Even from several dozen kilometers away, the two of them could sense that the dark golden ball of light gave off a mysterious and powerful aura. "Let's go and take a look." Ji Tianqing flew into the night sky without hesitation, heading towards the northwest corner of the wasteland. Yun Yao hurriedly followed him. While flying, she looked around vigilantly. Neither of them had forgotten that there was a mysterious soul refinement realm expert who had arrived here earlier than them. Neither of them dared to let their guard down before they were certain that the expert was dead. Shwa! Not long after, the two of them flew to the northwest corner of the wasteland and stopped outside the dark golden light barrier. The two of them looked down at the ball of golden light. Only then did they see the situation clearly. In a corner with a radius of 3,000 meters, there were 36 huge rocks that were more than 100 feet tall. These dark brown boulders were not uniform in shape. It was obvious that they had been shattered by a powerful impact. However, the placement of the 36 boulders seemed to follow a certain pattern, forming a mysterious formation. It was this formation that had imperceptibly gathered the earth fire essence within 1,000 miles to form a light barrier with a radius of 3,000 meters, sealing this area. The dark golden ball of light that was suspended in mid-air had a sharp and slender appearance. It looked like an elongated sword or a long spear. Of course, if one looked closely, it looked more like a wisp of golden flame. It slowly wandered in mid-air, emitting a terrifying aura. However, it could not escape from the light barrier. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other and saw the surprise and doubt in each other's eyes. Sure enough, someone has been here and even set up a great formation here. This formation that was set up with boulders looks very simple. However, it actually contains the heavenly Tao's principles. It's extremely profound. Even with my attainments in formations, I can't see any clues or traces. This is simply a great formation formed by the heavens and earth. The most mysterious thing is that golden light. It's like a sword or a spear. It seems to contain an extremely powerful and special power. I'm sure that the level of that power is beyond the soul tempering stage. The two of them discussed this through voice transmission, and at this point, both of them nodded in agreement. In the next moment, a thought suddenly appeared in Ji Tianqing's mind. A look of shock flashed across his eyes. He said in a serious tone, "Yao Yao, that mysterious golden flame is definitely not the spiritual energy of heaven and earth or dharmic powers. It's very likely to be divine power. Although the golden flame's power is restrained and sealed by a formation, its aura is still terrifying. The power of that golden flame is definitely not something that a soul-tempering stage cultivator can withstand. Its aura is a little like that of an essence soul stage cultivator." Yun Yao's eyes lit up immediately. Her tone was full of anticipation as she said, "Could it be that the divine item hidden here is that mysterious golden flame? If we break the formation and refine that golden flame, won't our dharmic powers skyrocket and our combat power skyrocket?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, "However, this ingenious formation is very difficult to break. I need some time to look up some information before I can break it." He thought of the mysterious tombstone in the Kenshin tomb and the Heavenly Tome Library hidden in the tombstone. The Heavenly Tome Library contained countless secret techniques and miscellaneous secret manuals, including all kinds of formations in the world. He had a premonition that the giant stone formation in front of him, which seemed to have been formed naturally, was most likely a divine-level formation. Only by looking up information in the Heavenly Tome Library would there be a glimmer of hope to break it. However, just as he finished speaking, a deep and sinister laugh suddenly sounded in the empty night sky. "Kik. What a surprise. It's been a few decades, and someone can break my illusory star 10 terminal formation and break in here." This sudden sneer broke the silence of the night sky. It contained a sinister evil aura and a trace of cold murderous intent, which made people shudder. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's expressions changed instantly. They immediately turned around and looked around vigilantly. However, the night sky and the wasteland around them were empty. Not even a shadow could be seen. The old and sinister laugh seemed to have come out of nowhere. There was no source. Someone is hiding here. It should be the soul-tempering stage cultivator who set up the formation. Be careful. The formation that we broke is called the Illusory Star 10 Terminal Formation? I seem to have heard this name somewhere before. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao communicated with each other telepathically. They held their swords in their hands and looked around cautiously. The other party did not come with good intentions. His words were filled with murderous intent. He was definitely not a kind person. Chapter 1203. The wasteland and the night sky were silent. The air was filled with a scorching aura and a faint murderous aura. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood back to back. They both released their divine soul power to detect the whereabouts of the person who spoke. Just as the two of them were on high alert and ready to attack, the old voice sounded again. "Haha, two ignorant juniors. How dare you try to lay your hands on my treasures? You really don't know what's good for you. No matter what, The two of you will definitely die if you dare to trespass here. As his voice fell, two dazzling sword lights suddenly shot out from a pile of rocks 10 miles away from the two of them, stabbing towards the two of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two dazzling sword auras were both 100 meters long. They contained a vast amount of divine soul power and were extremely powerful. The dazzling sword auras instantly pierced through the night sky like lightning. They crossed 10 miles of space and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. At the critical moment, the two of them who were already prepared subconsciously formed a dermic power shield and resisted with all their might. One of the dazzling sword auras hit Ji Tianqing, but it was blocked by his dermic power shield. He was sent flying 100 meters away by the sword auras. The dermic power shield that enveloped his body and the dazzling sword auras shattered at the same time. They turned into countless white light fragments and splashed in all directions. Almost at the same time, Yun Yao was also sent flying by the dazzling sword auras. Her dermic power shield was shattered, but the dazzling sword auras were intact and pierced her body fiercely. She flew 100 meters away and crashed into the dark red light shield. She was bounced back and fell to the ground. She rolled a few times before coming to a stop. When she got up from the ground and flew back into the sky, her face was already pale and blood was flowing out from the corner of her mouth. Obviously, the mysterious old man's strength was much stronger than hers. She could not withstand his attack at all. Ji Tianqing saw that Yun Yao was injured and immediately became worried. He asked through telepathy, "Yao Yao, how are your injuries?" Yun Yao shook her head lightly and replied, "It's fine. Don't worry. Focus on that guy." At this time, a thin and tall black figure flew out from a pile of rocks 10 miles away and stood in the night sky. That figure seemed to be very surprised. He stared at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao and said in a startled tone, "Eh? These two little things were actually able to block this old man's sword with 70% of his strength? Not simple at all. You've all entered the soul refinement realm. Looking at the entire profound sky continent, young soul refinement stage warriors like you are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. It's hard to find one in 100 years. When Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao heard the old man's voice, they carefully looked at the black figure and saw his appearance clearly. It was an old man who was more than 6 feet tall and wore a black robe. His face was thin and withered, and his eyes were deeply sunken, but his eyes were deep and sharp. He had a gray goatee on his chin, and his long white hair draped messily behind his head. He appeared extremely casual. Ji Tianqing stared at the old man and sized him up. Vaguely, he felt that the old man's appearance and facial features gave him a sense of déjà vu. When he thought here, he was instantly filled with doubts. He thought inwardly, "Strange, this old man said that no one could break the illusory star 10 terminal formation for a few dozen years. This proves that this old man came here a few dozen years ago and most likely never left. If that's the case, how could I have seen him before? Why do I feel that he looks somewhat familiar?" At this time, Yun Yao seemed to have guessed something. With an expressionless face, she said to the old man with a serious tone, "Since you know the situation of the continent so well and you have the strength of the soul refinement realm, I think you must be a famous tyrant. Do you dare to tell me your name?" That black-robed old man twitched his mouth and sneered disdainfully. "Humph! You little girl are ridiculous. I've already become famous on the continent 100 years ago. However, the two of you are about to die. Why do you need to know my identity?" Yun Yao had already guessed that he would say this. Without hesitation, she said, "We have no enmity with you, but you want to kill us as soon as you see us. How are you any different from the demon clan when you're so cruel and bloodthirsty? I'm the young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace. Since you're a famous powerhouse, you should know that Cloud Soul Palace's power is not to be trifled with." That black-robed old man was indeed startled. His deep eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. However, he was only startled for a moment. Immediately, he came back to his senses and sneered playfully, "Young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace? Yun Zhongqi's daughter? I didn't expect Cloud Soul Palace to be so lucky to have such a young soul refinement realm powerhouse." Hearing the black-robed old man's words, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other with deep meaning in their eyes. "Tianqing, this old man knows my father. He must be one of the top powerhouses and nobles of the human race. Yao Yao, think of a way to get information from him. Not only do we need to know his identity, But we also need to know the origin of that giant stone formation and the mysterious golden flame. Yun Yao nodded silently and was about to continue speaking. The black-robed old man's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing. His voice was playful as he said, "A young man who can accompany the young palace master of Cloud Soul Palace must have an extraordinary background. You're so young, but you've reached the soul refinement realm. I'm sure you're not a nobody. Tell me, who are you? If your answer satisfies this old man, perhaps this old man will spare your life." "Spare my life?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered disdainfully. "Old man, you're not worthy. I'm the first prince of the imperial residence, the #1 genius of the human race." The imperial residence? #1 genius? The black-robed old man was stunned and frowned. However, in the next moment, he threw his head back and laughed. "Ha ha ha. What a joke. That's ridiculous. I've only been away from worldly affairs for a few decades, and such an arrogant and ignorant junior has appeared in this world. How dare he call himself the first prince, the #1 genius?" Ji Tianqing became more and more certain of his guess. He stared at the black-robed old man and sneered. "Old man, the continent is changing rapidly, and the world of martial arts is changing constantly. You haven't set foot on the continent for a few decades, so of course you're ignorant and ridiculous." As he spoke, he pointed at the giant stone formation behind him and sneered. "If I'm not wrong, this area used to be the territory of the dark fire tortoise. You broke into this place a few decades ago, drove the dark fire tortoise out, and set up a seal to seal the passage. For the past few decades, the dark fire tortoise could only stay outside in the abyss. You've been hiding here, either to cultivate in seclusion, or to study this giant stone formation?" When the black-robed old man heard this, he frowned again and stared at him sharply. He shouted coldly, "Boy, who are you? Let me ask you, is your surname Long?" Chapter 1204. The black-robed elder's words made Yun Yao's expression change slightly. She quickly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing to ask, "Tianqing, this old man asked if your surname is Long. Does he think you're a prince of the imperial court?" "Yes," Ji Tianqing responded and said in a playful tone, "This old man saw that I'm young, but I have the strength of the soul-refining realm. I can even analyze the truth, so he guessed that I'm a prince of the imperial court." Yun Yao quickly asked, "Then why don't you lie and say that you're a prince of the imperial court and see how he reacts? If he's afraid because of this, it means that his power is restricted by the imperial court. Then, we might be able to analyze his identity." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked in a serious tone, "Yao Yao, don't you remember which force's illusory star 10 terminal formation is?" Yun Yao shook her head gently and said, "I have a vague impression of it. I've heard of it somewhere before, but I can't remember at the moment." At this moment, the black-robed elder shouted angrily and interrupted their conversation. "Bastard, let me ask you, is your surname Long?" Ji Tianqing glanced at him and sneered, "So what if I am?" The black-robed elder's expression immediately changed. His expression was very gloomy as he muttered in a low voice, "No, this is impossible. How can the imperial court be so close to the Cloud Spirit Palace? The imperial court's power is checks and balances. He wants to maintain the balance of the 3 aristocratic families. It's impossible for him to support the Cloud Spirit Palace." As he muttered, his expression kept changing. He sighed with a complicated tone. "As I expected, this kid is really from the imperial court. No wonder he's such a genius." Ji Tianqing saw that the black-robed elder kept muttering, so he shouted in a dignified tone, "Old man, since you've already guessed my identity, what are you waiting for? Come over and salute me. All the humans in the world are the subjects of the imperial court. No matter what your identity or background is, you have to crawl under my feet." A powerful and majestic aura burst out from his body as he shouted in a booming voice, "I will only give you one chance. Kneel down and apologize to me immediately, and I will spare your life." Although he was impersonating the Son of Heaven, Long Yunxiao, he was even more imposing than Long Yunxiao. The black-robed old man's face was as gloomy as ice. His expression changed for a long time before he finally made up his mind. He slowly raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing. Grinning coldly, he said with a murderous look, "Boy, so what if you are a prince of the imperial court? If we were in the central continent, This old man might have to be wary of you and bow to you respectfully. But you shouldn't have come here to die. Even more so, you shouldn't have ruined my decades of painstaking planning. I'll kill the two of you right now. I don't care if you're from Cloud Spirit Palace or a prince from the Imperial Court. You'll have to die here. The black-robed old man was extremely agitated. His tone was low and gloomy, and his eyes had turned evil. He sneered as if he had gone mad. There are only the three of us here. No one will know even if I kill the two of you. Don't blame me for being ruthless. You can only blame yourselves for being too unlucky. Deh. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed old man raised his hands. His sleeves fluttered as he waved his palms, unleashing a blinding white sword light that covered the sky and earth. He had already decided to kill them. He had decided to silence them, so he used all his strength without holding back. 10,000 sword flash formation. The black-robed old man roared angrily and released 10,000 blinding white sword lights that were 30 feet long. They covered the night sky within a 30-mile radius. The area was illuminated by the white light. The air was also compressed and turned into a vacuum. Every sword light was extremely fierce and sharp. It could tear heaven and earth and souls apart. The 10,000 sword lights came down at the same time. It was like a sword formation that could destroy heaven and earth. It drowned Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Not only that, but the black-robed old man also used 7 divine soul Dharma eyes in order to kill them in one strike. 7-star soul destruction. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. He controlled the 7 divine soul Dharma eyes that were as large as palaces. They exploded with destructive power and blasted toward Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Suddenly, the two of them were in danger and were about to die in the black-robed old man's attack. At the critical moment, the two of them unleashed all their strength and launched a counterattack. Milky Way ribbon. Yun Yao shouted and used her majestic dermic powers to form a shield to protect herself. She waved her sword and slashed out a 1,000-meter-long Milky Way ribbon that slashed toward the sword lights in the sky. Draw your sword. Ji Tianqing pulled out his broken sword and slashed toward the black-robed old man with all his strength. The 1,000-meter-long white light giant sword shattered the sword lights in the sky and arrived in front of the black-robed old man. The black-robed old man felt the terrifying power of the sword that threatened his life. His expression changed drastically and he exclaimed, "Damn it! Little bastard, you have such strength." He hurriedly waved his palms to form a few palm shadows that were as large as mountains to block the giant's sword. Bam! 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 The palm shadows collided with the giant's sword and a series of muffled sounds exploded. The palm shadows and the giant sword collapsed at the same time and shattered into pieces that flew in all directions. At the same time, the black-robed old man's 7 divine soul Dharma eyes struck Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao hard. Rumble! Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the two of them were sent flying and tumbled over 10 miles away. When Ji Tianqing was about to hit the ground, he neutralized the terrifying impact and finally stabilized himself. He stood in the sky with a pale face. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he panted heavily. Meanwhile, Yun Yao was sent flying over 10 miles away and landed on the ground with a loud thud. She smashed a pile of boulders and shattered them into pieces. She lay on the ground with her hair in a messy bun. Her beautiful hair covered her face. Her white dress and the front of her chest were stained with dark red blood. When she struggled to stand up, she could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. There was no doubt that she was severely injured by the black-robed old man in one move. Her combat strength was greatly weakened. After all, she was only at the 1st level of the soul refinement realm, while the black-robed old man was at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. The gap between the two of them was too big. Even if she was a peerless beauty, it was impossible for her to block the black-robed old man's full power attack. When Ji Tianqing saw Yun Yao stumbling, he knew that she was severely injured. Swoosh! His figure flashed and turned into a golden stream of light. He rushed to Yun Yao's side and supported her. "Yao Yao, how are you? Can you hold on with your injuries?" Yun Yao shook her head gently. She used her qi to suppress her injuries and comforted him. "Tianqing, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I can hold on." Ji Tianqing was filled with anxiety and worry. He hurriedly took out the green light treasure tree and channeled a majestic green light into Yun Yao's body to help her heal quickly. In the distant night sky, the black-robed old man sneered proudly. He was about to pursue and kill Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao in one fell swoop. Suddenly, he saw the green light treasure tree in Ji Tianqing's hand. His expression changed drastically and he was stunned. That's the green light treasure tree? Why is it in your hands? Chapter 1205. Ji Tianqing was busy treating Yun Yao's injuries. With the help of the green light treasured tree, he used the secret technique of the Wood Emperor umbrella. Suddenly, he heard the black-robed elder's exclamation. His body shook, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He suddenly turned to look at the black-robed elder and said coldly, "You recognize the green light treasured tree? Who are you?" The black-robed elder's face was as cold as ice. He asked sternly, "Boy, how did you get this green light treasured tree? Tell me." Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed his identity and background. He deliberately tested him and said sternly, "This magic treasure is mine. What does it have to do with you?" The black-robed elder was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He roared furiously, "Bullshit! Since 1,000 years ago, the green light treasured tree has been the heirloom of the Duanmu family. When did it become yours? You damn bastard! What kind of despicable trick did you use to take the green light treasured tree for yourself?" Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a mocking sneer. "Ha ha ha! You old fellow, you've finally admitted your identity? You are from the Duanmu family. Let me guess. With your age and strength, and your decades of seclusion, you are the grand elder of the Duanmu family, Duanmu Peng." The black-robed elder's expression changed drastically. An extremely cold light flashed in his eyes, and his entire body emitted a murderous aura. Since his identity had been recognized, he no longer had to hide. He no longer had any scruples. "That's right. I am Duanmu Peng. Since you have guessed my identity, you should know that both of you will die today. Now, I will give you a choice. As long as you tell me how you got the green light treasured tree, I will give you a quick death." As he spoke, Duanmu Peng's entire body surged with invisible spiritual energy and spread it in all directions. His 7 spiritual energy Dharma eyes also spread out in all directions, forming a light screen with a radius of 50 miles. The entire area was sealed off by the blazing white light curtain, becoming a domain under his control. He stood expressionlessly in mid-air, staring coldly at Ji Tianqing. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was incomparably ferocious. Ji Tianqing kept the injured Yun Yao into the sword world and gave her the cyan light treasure tree so that she could recuperate in the peaceful soil city. He held the broken sword in his hand and faced Duanmu Peng alone, his aura rising steadily. "Ha ha ha! Duanmu Peng, do you really want to know the answer?" The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking sneer, and his tone was very playful. Duanmu Peng had a bad premonition. He glared at him, gritting his teeth as he shouted, "Tell me! You damnable little bastard, what exactly did you do to the Duanmu clan?" Ji Tianqing slowly raised his left hand and made a throat-slitting gesture. He sneered and said, "The Duanmu aristocratic family harbored evil intentions and attempted to rebel. They have already been executed by the imperial court." "Bullshit!" Duanmu Peng was so angry that his face instantly became distorted. His blood and qi flowed in the opposite direction as he roared at the top of his voice. "That's impossible. Our Duanmu clan is loyal to the imperial court. We would never rebel. The imperial court would also never lay a hand on the Duanmu clan. You little bastard, you are definitely not from the imperial court." Ji Tianqing saw that he was about to go crazy and guessed that the Duanmu clan was his Achilles' heel, so he provoked him even more proudly. "Ha ha! Duanmu Peng, you old bastard, you have been hiding here like a dead dog for decades. You don't even know about the changes in the continent. The current Tianxian land is no longer the world you know. When Duanmu Huang died, blood spurted out of his 7 orifices, and his body exploded. He died in an extremely tragic manner. Even today, I still remember his twisted and painful appearance, and his crazed and angry appearance. His screams and roars still lingered in my ears. And the descendants of the Duanmu clan, Duanmu Yulong, Duanmu Feiyu, they all died under my sword." Ji Tianqing described it vividly. When Duanmu Peng heard this, the corresponding scene immediately appeared in his mind. He was provoked to the point that he went completely crazy. He roared hysterically and unleashed all his strength, charging towards Ji Tianqing. Little bastard! I'm going to kill you! I'm going to tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust! As he roared, Duanmu Peng released a vast amount of magic power, which condensed into a dozen blazing white sword rays that were 100 meters long, and charged towards Ji Tianqing. Swoosh swoosh swoosh! The dozen dazzling sword rays enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure from all directions, leaving him nowhere to hide. At this critical moment, he did not panic at all. He quickly spread out his golden wings to protect himself. Golden rock wings. The dozen blazing white sword rays that could destroy heaven and earth struck Ji Tianqing fiercely, causing a series of dull and loud sounds. Bam bam bam. Ji Tianqing's figure was engulfed by the blazing white light. He was even thrown back 100 steps before he could barely stop himself. However, the golden wings blocked the power of the sword rays, and he was unharmed. Duanmu Peng saw that he was unharmed and was stunned for a moment. He revealed an expression of disbelief. At the same time, Ji Tianqing withdrew his golden wings. He waved the broken sword in his right hand and unleashed a full power slash. Draw your sword. With a wave of the broken sword, a blazing white sword ray that was 100 meters long slashed diagonally towards Duanmu Peng from below. The speed of this slash was as fast as the aurora and as fast as lightning tearing through the night sky. Duanmu Peng sensed that something was wrong. He was afraid of the power of this slash, but it was too late for him to dodge. Bam! Amidst a muffled bang, the all-conquering blazing white sword light fiercely struck Duanmu Peng, and it instantly slashed him flying. Even though he was at the 7th level of the spirit tempering realm, he was unable to block this slash. He flew back 1,000 meters before he finally stabilized himself and came to a stop. The sword ray dissipated, but there was a long and narrow wound on his chest. Blood flowed out continuously. Hee. A 7th level spirit tempering realm expert is just Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he mocked Duanmu Peng. Duanmu Peng was even more furious. He waved his palms wildly and roared as he unleashed a barrage of giant sword rays towards Ji Tianqing. Boom boom boom. With a deafening dull sound, the sky was filled with giant sword rays and saber rays. They drowned Ji Tianqing's figure. He was also sent flying, crashing into the edge of the divine soul domain. Fortunately, his physical body and soul territory were strong enough. He was only slightly injured and it did not affect his battle. He circulated his energy to suppress his injuries and opened the sword world to summon the Golden Mountain King. The Golden Mountain King knew that Duanmu Peng had encountered a strong enemy and was fighting fiercely. He was already filled with fighting spirit and could not wait to join the battle. The moment the sword world opened, the Golden Mountain King roared and jumped out. He raised his dark golden hammer and used all his strength to smash it towards Duanmu Peng. Chapter 1206. Duanmu Peng was chasing Ji Tianqing with all his might as he released a few shocking sword radiances. He never thought that the Jinshan King would suddenly jump out and attack him with all his might. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the gigantic mountain-like golden warhammer image smashed into the sword light released by Duanmu Peng. The gigantic 100-meter-long sword lights that tore through the sky were smashed to pieces on the spot and scattered in all directions. Duanmu Peng's secret killer move had been destroyed by the Golden Mountain King by accident. After all, the sword radiances were meant for assassination. Almost no one could block them head-on. However, the defense of the sword radiances was very weak. Seeing this, Duanmu Peng was stunned. He stared at the Golden Mountain King with a cold look in his eyes and a murderous intent surged from his body. Where did this shorty come from? How dare you stop me? Dang! Duanmu Peng cursed angrily. He immediately used a secret technique. He waved his palms and sent out 3 sky-covering palm shadows toward the Golden Mountain King. The Golden Mountain King swung his hammer with all his might and shot out golden radiances to block Duanmu Peng's attack. Unfortunately, he was much weaker than Duanmu Peng and could not block the attack. Bang! 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 The Golden Mountain King was hit by the 5-colored palm shadows and fell to the ground. He was smashed into the ruins. Duanmu Peng wanted to continue attacking and kill the Golden Mountain King. At this moment, Ji Tianqing had already pounced on him. He waved his broken sword and stabbed with all his might. Stab! Swoosh! A dazzling cold light flashed in the dark sky. Almost at the same time, the cold light appeared in front of Duanmu Peng's chest and shone with the brightest light. Duanmu Peng had been cautious when dealing with Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect Ji Tianqing's sword skills to be so powerful. When the cold light shone, he sensed something was wrong. However, it was too late. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The dazzling cold light shone and engulfed Duanmu Peng in an instant. Even if he condensed a shield with his boundless magic power, even if he had a soul-level soft armor to protect his body, it was useless. The destructive power instantly tore apart his magic power shield and armor, crushing one of his arms. He was sent flying backward, covered in blood, and fell into the sky 10 miles away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing chased after him with all his might. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he fiercely slashed out. Heaven-splitting sword. This was a sword that combined essence, energy, and spirit. It was also the sword with the most terrifying might. Boom! Before Duanmu Peng could dodge, he was struck by the 1,000-meter-long sword light. He fell from the sky and smashed into the ground that was covered in rubble. The ground that was already in ruins was immediately smashed into a huge crater, causing dust and gravel to splatter everywhere. A deafening sound reverberated in the sky. The ground within a radius of dozens of miles also trembled violently, leaving behind countless ravines. Ji Tianqing used 3 of his most powerful sword techniques. He continuously attacked and finally severely injured Duanmu Peng, causing him to be bathed in blood. His injuries worsened. His hair was disheveled, and he looked very miserable. He roared crazily. "Bastard! You damned beast! I'm going to kill you! I'm going to tear you to pieces!" His rage and murderous aura made him lose his mind. Ignoring his own injuries, he leapt towards Ji Tianqing without a care for his own safety. At the same time, he manipulated the power of his divine soul domain and unleashed thousands of white beams of divine soul light that shot towards Ji Tianqing like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianqing and the Jinshan King joined forces to block Duanmu Peng. They waited for an opportunity to counterattack and fight with Duanmu Peng. The 3 of them fought with all their might in Duanmu Peng's spiritual realm. They constantly used all kinds of secret skills. Huge light blades that cut across the sky, arrows, spears, and sword shadows that covered the sky, and all kinds of dazzling phantoms that looked like demons and divine beasts flashed in the sky. Deafening explosions continued to erupt like muffled thunderclaps. The aftermath of the battle between the 3 of them was like colorful hurricanes, crazily hitting the ground and countless huge rocks on the ground. Soon, 15 minutes had passed. In such a short time, the 3 of them had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. The Jinshan King was already severely injured. His body was covered with wounds and blood. His aura was weak, and he went back into the sword world to recover. Only Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Peng were left. They were still fighting to the death. Both of them were seriously injured. Their bodies were stained with dark red blood, and they looked very miserable. However, Duanmu Peng's injuries were obviously more serious. Not only did he lose an arm, but he also lost a leg. His body was covered with hundreds of wounds, big and small. Most of them were so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood kept gushing out. The armor and black robe he was wearing had long been shredded into rags. Even his 2 soul-level magic treasures, a magic sword and a magic seal, had been shattered by Ji Tianqing's broken sword. In comparison, Ji Tianqing's injuries were much lighter. There were only a dozen wounds on his body, and his chest and back were stained with blood. His hair was messy, but he was still calm and collected. He still had about 60% of his combat strength. At this point, the 2 of them had been fighting for so long, and the results were beginning to show. Duanmu Peng had lost his edge. He was no longer as strong and violent as before. His strength was getting weaker and weaker. When he once again manipulated his divine soul domain and condensed tens of thousands of divine soul sword lights to bombard Ji Tianqing from the sky, Ji Tianqing finally seized the opportunity. Now is the time. He ignored the divine soul sword light that blotted out the sky. His eyes were fixed on Duanmu Peng as he brazenly executed his most powerful move. Sword of Judgment. He shouted and summoned the spiritual sword. The golden sword soul turned into a 100-meter-long giant sword and attacked Duanmu Peng with all his might. The giant sword flashed with a blinding golden light and exuded a vast amount of spiritual energy. It exploded with a power that could destroy everything. Whoosh! In a quarter of an instant, the golden giant sword broke through 10 miles of the sky and hit Duanmu Peng. Boom! In a deafening sound, Duanmu Peng was hit by the sword of judgment. His body was drowned in the golden light. That sacred and dazzling golden light directly destroyed his magic power shield and defense, blasting his physical body into smithereens, and turning him into a sky full of debris that splashed in all directions. Many pieces of flesh melted like snow under the power of the golden light. They disappeared before they fell to the ground. Ji Tianqing's secret skill directly destroyed Duanmu Peng's body and completely defeated him. Swoosh! A dazzling blazing white light flew out from the pieces of the corpse and fled into the distance in a panic. It was Duanmu Peng's spiritual soul. He couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing, a LV3 soul-tempering realm cultivator, could defeat him and destroy his body. Chapter 1207. Swish! In a short breath's time, Duanmu Peng's divine soul had fled nearly 10 miles away. He had already fled to the edge of the divine soul domain and was about to escape danger. As long as he could escape the divine soul domain, Ji Tianqing would definitely not be able to catch up to him. After all, the domain formed by the 7 divine soul Dharma eyes would bring Ji Tianqing no small amount of trouble and could obstruct him for a very long time. However, Duanmu Peng had underestimated Ji Tianqing's strength. Just as his divine soul was about to pass through the divine soul domain, Ji Tianqing had already arrived and opened the third eye on his forehead. Thunderbolt! Within the golden Dharma eye, the azure eye released an endless amount of thunderbolt energy, condensing into a thunderbolt beam. Boom! Crack! The thunderbolt beam that was over 100 feet long struck Duanmu Peng's divine soul with a loud bang. Duanmu Peng's divine soul might be powerful, but the thunderbolt energy that Ji Tianqing had accumulated for 2 months was also powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth. The blazing white divine soul ball was struck by the thunderbolt beam, causing several cracks to appear on it as it crashed into the ground. The already messy ground was once again blasted into a huge crater, causing dust and gravel to fill the air. With his divine soul heavily injured, Duanmu Peng fell into a temporary daze. His mind was muddled, and he could not differentiate between north, south, east, and west. It was even harder for him to move. At the same time, Ji Tianqing flew above the crater and slashed down with his sword, chopping at Duanmu Peng with all his strength. Boom! The blazing white divine soul sword beam struck Duanmu Peng's divine soul with a loud bang. This time, Duanmu Peng was no longer lucky. His divine soul was split into several pieces on the spot, completely annihilated. The dignified Grand Elder of the Duanmu family, a transcendent powerhouse at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm, was actually killed by Ji Tianqing. He was only at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm, but at the cost of serious injuries. He killed a powerhouse who was 4 levels above him. This was simply a miracle. If this matter were to spread out, no one would believe it. But Ji Tianqing did it. The ruins and the night sky within a radius of dozens of miles gradually returned to silence. The dust and gravel that covered the sky and the loud noise that reverberated in the night sky gradually disappeared. The surroundings quieted down and returned to darkness. Ji Tianqing landed on the ground, put away the broken sword, and picked up Duanmu Peng's soul fragments. He stuffed these soul fragments into the broken sword and let the burial of heaven devour them to restore its vitality. Then, he circulated his energy to suppress his injuries and stop the bleeding. After treating his injuries, he swallowed 2 soul-grade pills and sat cross-legged on the ground, circulating his qi to treat his injuries. Although his injuries were very serious and he looked miserable, he was still in a very bad state. However, with his powerful self-healing ability, it only took him a day to recover more than half of his injuries. The dozens of wounds on his body had all healed, leaving only some shallow scars that would disappear in at most half a month. Now that his movements were no longer hindered, he ended the healing process and walked towards the northwest corner. The naturally formed boulder formation was still intact. Even though the battle between Ji Tianqing and Duanmu Peng had turned the barren land within a radius of dozens of miles into ruins. However, the boulder formation was not affected or damaged at all. Within the formation, the dark golden flame that floated in the air was still moving slowly. Ji Tianqing stood outside the boulder formation and stared at the flame with anticipation in his eyes. Duanmu Peng has stayed here for dozens of years. It should be for that golden flame. For him to spend dozens of years researching and exploring it, It must be a treasure above the primordial spirit realm. He stared at the mysterious golden flame and muttered to himself, "There are no divine artifacts or magic treasures here, nor are there any divine beasts or Neptunian divine pearls. The light that illuminated the sky for tens of thousands of miles was probably caused by this golden flame. No matter what, I have to get it." If he wanted to get the mysterious golden flame, he had to break through the boulder formation. He opened his pure heart Dhamma eye and tried to observe the formation. He tried to find its network and structure. However, after studying it for 4 hours, he could only give up helplessly. This huge stone formation looked simple and crude, but it was actually created by the heavens and earth, and was nurtured by the heavens and earth. The entire formation was a single entity. There were no rules or networks to follow, and he could not tell what its structure was. Simply put, with his current mastery of formations, he could not understand this formation at all, let alone break through it. He was unwilling to give up. He tried to unleash a ball of 5-colored magic energy, which landed heavily on the dark red barrier. Boom! There was a heavy sound, but the dark red barrier did not budge at all. It seemed to be extremely tough and terrifyingly tough. A monstrous flame ignited on the light shield, bursting forth with a powerful counterforce. Ji Tianqing was already prepared, but he was still knocked 1,000 meters away by the terrifying backlash. He almost fell to the ground. His face was pale from the backlash of the array, and he felt a sharp pain in his internal organs. His injuries, which had not yet recovered, worsened. Damn it, the power of this boulder formation is beyond my imagination. It seems that if I want to understand and break through it, I can only place my hopes on the heavenly book pavilion. Thinking of this, he sat cross-legged on the ground and sent his soul into Kenshin's tomb. Swoosh! With a flash, his soul sword appeared in Kenshin's tomb. It condensed into a golden figure that looked exactly like him. He flew across the desolate wasteland and arrived near the 18 black tombstones. He landed in front of the first tombstone on the right. The dark and cold tombstone faintly revealed a mysterious golden light and emitted a powerful devouring power. He reached out and touched the black tombstone. The powerful devouring power immediately enveloped his entire body. Swoosh! He only saw a blur before he was swallowed by the black tombstone and entered another space. He was not unfamiliar with this space. It was the heavenly book pavilion. Below his feet and in all directions were white clouds and mist. It was boundless. In the sea of clouds in front of him, there was a white jade bridge more than 10 feet wide. It was 100 meters long and connected to the depths of the sea of clouds. He stepped across the white jade bridge and quickly reached the depths of the sea of clouds. He arrived at the foot of the 1,000-foot-tall pagoda. The dark golden pagoda was as sacred and majestic as ever. It emitted an ancient aura. He stepped on the 99 steps and arrived at the door. He reached out and pressed his hands on the door. The golden dragon and fire phoenix pattern on the door lit up with a golden light and disappeared. Along with the muffled sound of creak creak creak, the 100-feet-tall heavy door slowly opened to both sides. Ji Tianqing had seen the mystery and majesty of the heavenly book pavilion before. He was not too surprised to see it again. He stepped through the door and entered the main hall. He began to shuttle through the many bookshelves, searching for books on arrays. There were more than 100,000 books in the main hall. There were many types of books, almost all of them containing the mysteries of the world. Just the number of ancient books on formations alone numbered in the thousands. Chapter 1208. In the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion, there were more than 4,000 ancient books on formations. Ji Tianqing eliminated the books on formations below the primordial spirit level, and there were still 4,000 books left. Then, he spent an entire day to pick out more than 300 books from the pile. These books were all about formations of heaven and earth, and they were the most useful to him. He sat on a stone bench in the corner of the hall and placed the books on the ground. He used his spiritual energy to read them one by one. Although he used his spiritual energy to read the books, his reading speed was unbelievably fast. However, these ancient books had been around for a long time, and the contents were obscure and difficult to understand. He needed at least 2 hours to finish reading an entire book, and he could only roughly understand the meaning. Time passed quietly, and a day passed quickly. He flipped through more than a dozen ancient books and gradually understood some of the mysteries of formations of heaven and earth. In this world, Everything was derived from the 5 elements of wind and thunder and various other forces. In other words, on a barren and lifeless cold planet, if there were 5 elements of wind and thunder, life could be born and evolve into flowers, trees, birds, and beasts. Therefore, the 5 elements of wind and thunder were the origin of life, and also the foundation of forming the world. Under the teachings and guidance of the gods, humans, demons, and other intelligent races learned to use the 5 elements of wind and thunder in the world to improve their strength and set up various formations. In this world, there were many wonderful formations of heaven and earth that were naturally formed by the 5 elements of wind and thunder. The formation process of these wonderful formations was very slow, but they could last for a very long time as if their power would never be exhausted. Moreover, these formations would change according to the changes in terrain, weather, and other factors. The weaker formations of heaven and earth were called feng shui layouts. This kind of weak formation could produce an invisible force that had a weak effect and effect. For example, the giant rock formation in front of Jitianqing was a more advanced and powerful formation of heaven and earth. This formation was formed by the fire essence and metal, earth, and other forces in the abyss, and had a lot to do with the terrain of the abyss. Jitianqing estimated that the giant rock formation took at least a few thousand years to form. So far, this formation had existed for at least 10,000 years. The power supporting the grand formation was the power of the earth, the abyss, and the magma within a radius of several thousand miles. As long as the terrain of these thousands of miles did not change, the boulder array would continue forever, and its power would never be exhausted. Similarly, if one wanted to break the giant rock formation, they had to start by changing the terrain and cutting off the power of the earth fire essence qi to gradually break the formation. After understanding this point, Jitianqing finally had an idea. He continued to read the ancient book. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. 5 days passed quickly. When he read the 86th ancient book, he had accumulated enough knowledge and experience to finally comprehend the method to break the formation. It was clearly recorded in the ancient books that this sort of enormous stone grand formation was called the Heaven Star Earthly Flaming Wind Formation, and it was one of the 99 strange formations in the heavens and the earth. Within 10,000 years of the formation of the Grand Array, it was only comparable to an Essence Soul level array formation. If the life of the Grand Array could reach 20,000 years, it would be comparable to a high-grade Primordial Spirit Realm Array formation. As for the Heavenly Star Earthly Fire-Spreading Wind Array that was more than 30,000 years old, it had surpassed the Primordial Soul stage and reached the even more mysterious and terrifying Heavenly Tribulation stage. That level of Grand Array formation was like the power of the Heavenly Tribulation, and it was extremely dangerous and terrifying. Jitianqing closed the ancient book and thought with a solemn expression. According to the evaluation standard in the ancient book, the lifespan of this giant rock formation is more than 30,000 years. Doesn't that mean it has reached the heavenly tribulation level? But the power of the giant rock formation is obviously only at the essence soul level. It is too far from the legendary heavenly tribulation level power. Could it be that the strength of the Grand Array is not only related to the age, but also related to the geographical area? He had read hundreds of books and was now very familiar with the heaven and earth formation. Of course, he could draw inferences and master it. I don't care anymore. It has dragged on for long enough. Let me give it a try first. After making up his mind, he quickly left the Heavenly Book Pavilion and returned to the dark abyss. The ruins within a radius of 10 miles were as dark and quiet as usual. 5 days had passed, and there were no changes in the ruins. No one had broken into this place. In the northwest corner, the giant rock formation was still as stable as a mountain, and its power was vast and mighty. Jitianqing held the broken sword in his hand and used his divine soul power to probe it, calling Yun Yao, the Jin Shan King, and the others. Swoosh! The entrance to the sword world opened, and Yun Yao flew out first and landed in front of him. Then, a golden light flashed, and the Jin Shan King also flew out with the dark golden warhammer. Previously, when the two of them fought with Duanmu Pang, they were seriously injured. After 5 days of seclusion to heal their injuries had mostly healed, and they were fine for the time being. When Yun Yao saw Jitianqing, she asked with concern, "Tianqing, have you killed Duanmu Pang? Or did he escape?" Jitianqing smiled and said, "How can I let him escape? If he escapes from here, he will definitely return to Zhongzhou. When he finds out the truth about the Duanmu family's destruction, he will definitely take revenge on us. For an expert at the 7th level of the spirit refining realm like him, if he hides in the dark and waits for an opportunity to take revenge, the threat is too great. So I have to kill him at all costs, even if I am injured, to prevent future trouble. Yun Yao nodded and said, "That's right. Fortunately, you have killed him." The Jinshan king looked around and asked, "Young Master Ji, since you have killed that old man, why are you still here? Do you want to break the array and get the treasure inside?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a serious face, "That's right. There is a wisp of golden flame sealed in this stone array. It seems to be a divine power left behind from ancient times, and it might be related to the War of the Gods. I have read many books and studied it for a few days, and finally found a way to break the array, but I need your help." The Jinshan king was surprised and nodded, "Young Master Ji, if you have any orders, please tell me. I will do my best to help." Ji Tianqing didn't beat around the bush and said straightforwardly, "If you want to break this array, the first step is to change the terrain of the abyss. Jinshan king, this is the strength of your Earth Spirit clan. Gather 800 warriors immediately and follow the route and method that I have set, and change the terrain of the land within 1,000 miles. Then, he took out a large piece of paper and handed it to the Jinshan king. It was a topographic map with thousands of red lines drawn on it. Some were curved and some were crisscrossing like a fishing net. The Jinshan king took the map and looked at it carefully. He patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, young Master Ji. Leave it to us. We will finish it in 3 days." Then, he went to gather the warriors of the Earth Spirit clan and began to dig tunnels around the abyss to change the terrain. Chapter 1209. The Golden Mountain King led 800 warriors of the Earth Spirit clan to dig a tunnel within 1,000 miles of land. The terrain of this area was constantly changing. The Earth Fire Essence Qi and the Metal Earth Power were all cut off. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao continued to cast spells and set up all kinds of soul-grade formations around the giant stone formation in the ruins that were dozens of miles in radius. He wanted to use formations to break formations, gradually weaken the power of the giant rock formation, and then crack it. Everything was going according to his plan, in an orderly manner. For 2 days, the abyss was calm and peaceful. There were no disturbances. Until the 3rd day, 2 Sky Origin Realm Monster Kings suddenly broke into the abyss. The 2 Monster Kings were heavily injured. Their bodies were covered in blood, and they fled into the abyss with wounds all over their bodies. They looked furious and terrified. When they encountered the warriors of the Earth Spirit clan, they attacked recklessly. They used their powerful attacks and blasted many big holes and ravines in the ground. Ji Tianqing acted just in time and killed the 2 Demon Kings in an instant. He guessed that someone might have found the Fallen God Cliff and fought with the Monster Kings around the Fallen God Cliff. The 2 Monster Kings were badly wounded and had nowhere to hide. They ran into the abyss. Seeing this, Yun Yao hurried to remind him, "Tianqing, Duanmu Pang used to set up a sealing formation to seal the abyss passageway. No one could break in here. Now that we've broken the seal, I'm afraid there will be even more demonic beasts and martial artists coming here." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Yao Yao, you stay here. I will set up the sealing formation in the abyss passageway." Then, he left the dark wasteland and flew toward the abyss passageway. He flew along the passageway for 200 miles and stopped at a corner. He was ready to set up the sealing formation. Unfortunately, 2 figures wrapped in 5 colored lights were flying toward him at lightning speed. He scanned them with his God Soul power and found that they were 2 Sky Origin Realm Level 7 experts. As expected, Yao Yao guessed correctly. The powerhouses of Swinging Sky City have finally found this place. In the past, the God-Fallen Cliff did not have any worldly anomalies. There was also a dark fire tortoise guardian. No one could find the God-Fallen Cliff, much less come here. Now that the dark fire tortoise is dead and the sealing array is gone, these guys can still break in. How troublesome. He muttered a few words in his heart. Then he cast a spell and sent out 2 giant flaming palms towards the 2 Heaven Prime powerhouses. "This road is blocked. Leave immediately, or you will be killed without mercy." He shouted in a dignified voice, and his voice reverberated in the tunnel. When the 2 Heaven Origin Realm warriors saw the giant flaming palm coming and felt the unparalleled power, their faces turned pale with fright. "Oh my God! There really is someone here. Someone actually broke into this place in advance. He must be thinking of taking the divine artifact for himself." The first reaction of the 2 Heaven Origin stage cultivators was that there was a divine weapon hidden in the depths of the tunnel. That was why Ji Tianqing had stopped them. They used all their strength to send out a sky full of sword radiance to block the giant flaming palms. However, after 2 loud bangs, the 2 of them were sent flying by the giant flaming palms and slammed into the walls of the tunnel. The 2 of them were burnt black by the giant flaming palms. They were severely injured and spat out mouthfuls of blood. The 2 of them rolled on the ground, their bodies drenched in blood and covered in dust and gravel. They struggled for a while before they staggered to their feet. Their hair was disheveled and they were in a mess. Damn it! This guy is so strong. We can't fight him head on. Let's retreat, or we will die. The 2 of them were shocked by Ji Tianqing's strength, and fear grew in their hearts. Even if they were thinking about the divine artifact in the abyss, they did not dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly turned and ran. Ji Tianqing did not chase after them. He quickly waved his palms and set up a sealing array at the corner of the tunnel. 4 hours later, he set up a soul-level low-grade sealing array and temporarily sealed the tunnel. It was impossible for martial artists and demonic beasts below the soul-refining realm to break through this seal. After that, he returned to the dark abyss and continued to cast spells with Yun Yao. For the next 2 days, the abyss was very peaceful. As expected, no martial artists or demonic beasts came to disturb them. 4 days later, the Golden Mountain King and the 800 warriors had penetrated the land within a radius of 1,000 miles. A labyrinth array, which was as complicated as a fishing net and consisted of thousands of tunnels, was finally formed. Those tunnels crisscrossed and connected in all directions. It was extremely complicated and complicated. Ji Tianqing took out 3 soul-level magic swords and released a great amount of magic power. They gathered the power of the 5 elements of heaven and earth and activated the giant labyrinth array. 8 hours later, the huge formation with a circumference of 1,000 miles was finally activated. The complicated tunnels were filled with colorful spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It was like a dream and was extremely gorgeous. When Yun Yao saw this scene, she exclaimed in disbelief. "Oh my God! I thought you were just digging the tunnels and destroying the terrain of this area. I didn't expect you to set up a 1,000-mile array. Tianqing, your array skills have improved a lot. It's getting more and more amazing." Ji Tianqing slowly stopped. He lifted his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead. His face was pale as he gasped for breath. He smiled at Yun Yao and explained, "When I was reading the materials, I learned a lot of wonderful knowledge and understood some of the mysteries of heaven and earth. I can set up this 1,000-mile heaven and earth array because I need the help of the warriors of the Earth Spirit Clan and the power of heaven and earth. The power of an array set up with one's own power is limited. However, the power of an array set up with the power of heaven and earth is infinite." Then, he stared at the giant rock array and smiled. "The power of the giant rock array is weakening. The color and power of the dark red light shield are also weakening. It seems that my method is correct. I set up a heaven and earth array to weaken the power of the giant rock array. Yao Yao, we can start to break the array." The giant rock array's power source was cut off, and it gradually became difficult to support it. The dark red light shield also became weaker. In this way, the giant rock array became traceable, and it gradually showed the corresponding nodes and veins. Ji Tianqing studied the array for an entire day and finally found a way to break it. He started to break the array. With Yun Yao's help, he continuously cast spells to break the giant rock array. 2 days later, he was completely exhausted. His mind was exhausted, and he had used up 60 to 70% of his magic power. Fortunately, the giant rock array was finally broken. The 36 boulders became dim, cold, and deathly still. The dark red light shield that covered an area of 3,000 meters also gradually collapsed and dissipated. The giant rock array was completely broken, and the power of the seal was removed. Chapter 12:10. Ji Tianqing had long known that the sword-shaped dark golden flame could move. However, the boulder formation had sealed it and prevented it from escaping, so it could only hover quietly in the air. Now that the boulder formation had been broken, it had lost its restraints and would naturally fly away. As expected of divine power. It's like a living thing. Yun Yao murmured in surprise when she saw the dark golden flame fly across the night sky. Ji Tianqing had been waiting for this moment. When the dark golden flame flew across the night sky, he struck out with a giant golden hand and grabbed it. Bam! The powerful golden hand grabbed the dark golden flame. However, the dark golden flame was too powerful. It instantly shattered the giant golden hand with a muffled sound. Ji Tianqing was also knocked back 10 steps by the powerful shockwave. His face was pale. The dark golden flame only paused for a moment before it sped up and flew away. Damn it! It took me so much effort to break the formation. How can I let you escape from me? Ji Tianqing growled. Golden light gushed out of his body as he flew across the night sky and chased after the golden flame. After a few breaths, he finally caught up with the golden flame when it flew out of the wasteland and into the abyss passageway. Burial of heaven! Give me a hand! He growled in his mind and threw out the broken sword with his right hand. The ink-black broken sword immediately bloomed with dazzling divine golden light and turned into a giant sword 1,000 meters long. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 1,000-meter-long golden sword flew in front of the golden flames and blocked its path. Bam! The golden flames collided fiercely with the giant golden sword, exploding with a loud bang. The huge golden sword was sent flying and pierced into the rock wall. It blasted a huge hole in the rock wall and created countless ravines. Fortunately, the golden flame was also knocked back dozens of feet and slowed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing flew to Golden Flame's side and stretched out his right hand to grab Golden Flame. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, and his right palm released a dense and mysterious white light, grabbing the dark golden flame in his palm. Shwa! The dark golden flame was enveloped by the mysterious white light. Ji Tianqing grabbed it in his hand, and it immediately struggled to escape. Ji Tianqing held onto it tightly and refused to let go no matter what. He even desperately urged the power of the heaven-mending orb to fiercely suppress it. However, the power of the golden flames was too strong, and it continued to drag him forward. He dashed left and right all the way, constantly smashing into the walls of the tunnel. Bang 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 bang! Following a series of muffled booms, the ancient abyssal passageway was blasted to pieces and collapsed. An endless amount of gravel and dust fell from the top of the cave, creating loud rumbling noises and splashing dust all over the sky. Ji Tianqing was dragged out by Golden Flame. Yun Yao chased after him worriedly, but she couldn't catch up. About 20 breaths later, Golden Flame dragged Ji Tianqing 200 miles away and arrived in front of the ceiling formation he had set up. Ji Tianqing originally thought that the soul-level formation he had set up would be able to resist Golden Flame for a while. However, he didn't expect that Golden Flame would release an even more dazzling golden light and break the ceiling formation with a boom, creating a huge gap. Then, the mysterious Golden Flame dragged him through the gap in the formation and continued to fly out of the tunnel. Damn it! Why does this wisp of god power seem to have intelligence? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself in shock. His heart was filled with depression. Golden Flame continued to drag him out, crashing into the abyss passageway along the way, destroying it and turning it into a pile of ruins. Yun Yao and the Sword of Burial of Heaven chased after him, anxiously trying to find a way to save Ji Tianqing. Not long after, Golden Flame flew out of the abyss passageway with Ji Tianqing and into the pitch-black abyss. This abyss was located under the God-Falling Cliff. It was the place where Ji Tianqing had killed the dark fire tortoise. Fortunately, Golden Flame's power had weakened a bit, and its flying speed had slowed down a lot. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Sword of Burial of Heaven and Yun Yao quickly caught up and joined forces to help Ji Tianqing suppress the mysterious Golden Flame. The Sword of Burial of Heaven was second only to primordial spirit-grade Dharma treasures. Its power was unparalleled. With its help to suppress Golden Flame, the pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced, and he landed on the ground from the sky. He desperately urged the power of the heaven-mending orb to quickly devour the mysterious Golden Flame. Soon, Golden Flame calmed down. 15 minutes later, Golden Flame's struggle became weaker and weaker, and it was gradually suppressed by the heaven-mending orb. Another hour later, Golden Flame was completely devoured by the heaven-mending orb. It turned into thousands of golden threads and entered Ji Tianqing's body, sealed in his mind. The heaven-mending orb wrapped Golden Flame and slowly refined it. Only then did Ji Tianqing heave a sigh of relief. Phew! This Golden Flame is really difficult to deal with. Its power is unparalleled, and it's even stronger than primordial spirit supremes. If it weren't for the help of the Sword of Burial of Heaven and the heaven-mending orb, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to subdue it. Thinking of this, he was both glad and full of expectations for the mysterious Golden Flame. He couldn't help but imagine how powerful he would be after the heaven-mending orb helped him refine golden flame. However, the most important thing now was to adjust his breathing and recover his magic power. He hurriedly took out 2 pills and swallowed them. He sat cross-legged on the ground and began to adjust his breathing. Yao Yao, Sword of Burial of Heaven, protect me. I need 6 hours to cultivate. Yun Yao nodded and silently guarded him. The Sword of Burial of Heaven also floated in mid-air, monitoring all the movements around it. Ji Tianqing quickly entered a state of cultivation. His whole body was enveloped in a hazy, dazzling light. 2 hours later, Burial of Heaven's voice suddenly came from the broken sword. It said to Yun Yao, "You stay here and guard. I'll be back soon." After saying that, the broken sword flew away with a swoosh and soon disappeared into the darkness. Yun Yao didn't have time to ask what it was going to do. She could only keep her doubts in her heart. After a while, she saw 2 dazzling lights suddenly flash in the night sky 20 miles away, followed by a loud dull sound. However, the 2 dazzling lights were immediately extinguished. The loud sound also quickly dissipated. Not long after, Burial of Heaven flew back and quietly landed beside Ji Tianqing. Yun Yao couldn't help but ask, "Burial of Heaven, what did you do just now?" Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "There were 2 sneaky guys who had been watching from afar, secretly setting up formations and traps. I saw that they were plotting something, so I killed them." Yun Yao was startled. She couldn't help but secretly click her tongue. Burial of Heaven is really ruthless. Those 2 guys were too unlucky. For the next few hours, the abyss was very calm. After 6 hours, Ji Tianqing's magic power had recovered to 80%. He temporarily ended his cultivation. When he opened his eyes, he felt a burning sensation in his left hand. He looked down. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.